Chapter 621. Chi Chi Chi. However, just as the members of the Hua clan landed, the lake below, which had just calmed down, once again began to churn. The hearts of the people in the sky involuntarily tightened when they saw this. Their gazes looked at the group of people who were swiftly descending. The emotions in their hearts involuntarily became a little anxious. At the same time, Hoba had clearly sensed a dangerous aura from the scarlet lake below. It was fine if he was the only one on this trip. However, he still needed to take care of the members of the Hua clan behind him. Hence, he needed to be careful. Hoba, who was descending, shook his body slightly. Immediately, a circle of surging do chi swiftly spread from Hoba's body. In the blink of an eye, it had already agglomerated into a do chi barrier around the members of the Hua clan. After which, the speed at which the members of the Hua clan were descending became a little slower. The group of half-emperors following closely behind did not dare to slight the situation when they saw this. They hurriedly spread out the do chi within their bodies. After each of them reacted, they swiftly moved and caught up with the members of the Hua clan at the front. Puff puff. At this moment, numerous thick blood pillars suddenly shot out from the churning lake below just like before. They were like numerous huge snakes that had gone crazy. Their bodies emitted a bloody aura that was difficult to endure as they charged explosively toward the members of the Hua clan at this moment. The speed of the blood pillars had clearly exceeded the understanding of most of the half-emperors. Immediately, the expressions of quite a number of members of the Hua clan behind Hoba wildly changed. This was especially so when they smelled the dense bloody scent that permeated the air at this moment. Their expressions involuntarily paled, and a fear involuntarily surged into their hearts. Although these members of the Hua clan were quite strong, their training had always been within the clan. They were just like flowers in a greenhouse. In a situation where they had never experienced the true tempering of life and death, just the scene that had happened earlier was already enough to challenge their hearts. However, at this moment, they had suddenly turned from being spectators to being the ones whose lives were about to be threatened. No matter how one looked at it, they still felt a wave of discomfort in their hearts. Hoba was naturally able to understand the reason behind the absent-mindedness of these children of his. However, now was not the time to allow them to be arrogant. If they were careless, their lives might be at risk. How could he allow them to be absent-minded? Brats, wake up. If you want to return alive to see your parents, hurry up and dodge. In the void, Hoba, who was rapidly descending, suddenly turned his head. A shocking angry roar immediately spread into the ears of the members of the Hua clan like a thunderclap. His voice was so loud that it caused the expressions of all the members of the Hua clan behind Hoba to change drastically. At the same time, they hurriedly recovered from their absent-mindedness. At the same time, their bodies rapidly dodged, narrowly dodging the blood pillars that were heading towards them. However, the half-emperors following closely behind the members of the Hua clan were not so lucky. When the members of the Hua clan dodged, the blood pillars ruthlessly pierced through the chests of the half-emperors following closely behind them. Pu. Immediately, another dozen half-emperors died under the bombardment of the blood pillars. Those half-emperors who were lucky enough to survive did not dare to easily approach the members of the Hua clan. They were afraid that they would end up dying a miserable death like these people. Seeing this, Hoba's old face did not reveal the slightest bit of pity. Instead, his gaze swept over those half-emperors who had separated. The corners of his mouth parted into a cold smile. Immediately, his body moved and led the members of the Hua clan behind him as they swiftly flew towards the entrance of the desolate ancient remains. At the same time, the other half-emperors in the air above the lake did not dare to be slow. Their bodies swiftly flew forward, hoping to enter the remains before the blood pillars arrived again. As everyone rapidly descended, many blood pillars that reached the sky shot up from the surface of the lake. Immediately, they suddenly turned around and shot towards the experts who were approaching the entrance of the remains. When the blood pillars once again fell into the lake below, only less than half of the originally black mass of people remained in the sky above the lake. Thinking back, it took less than 10 minutes for all of this to happen. In less than 10 minutes, hundreds of half-emperors had already died in this place. This time around, the sacrifice they had made in order to enter the desolate ancient remains could not be considered small. However, When the remaining people thought that this was the end, and that they could finally enter the remains, wave after wave of extremely dense blood-colored fog once again drifted out from the deep hole below. The hearts of everyone present paled when they saw this scene. However, before they could react, the bodies of a couple of half-emperors in the swiftly descending group began to swell uncontrollably. Wild and violent doqi flew all over their bodies. Within a short couple of breaths, the bodies of a couple of half-emperors had already reached the brink of exploding. Bang bang bang. Soon after, an earth-shaking explosion once again spread. At this moment, even Xiao Yan, who was in the sky and covered by a black robe, involuntarily had a change in expression. What a frightening formation. Half-emperors are like ants in front of it. They can easily be finished off by this formation. Xiao Yan quietly muttered in his heart with a grave expression. His eyes under the black robe swept over the entire place in an undetectable manner. Immediately, his originally frowning eyebrows became even more tightly knit. Currently, most of the people present were half-emperors. Once these people approached the sky above the lake, forget about the blood pillars. However, once they were contaminated by the bloody aura, the doqi within their bodies would become violent. It was likely that even with Xiao Yan's ability, it would be difficult for him to not be injured. Just as Xiao Yan was thinking of a solution with a grave expression, the people from the Hua clan had already disappeared from the sky above the blood lake following the scattering of the energy storm below. From the looks of it, they should have already entered the remains. After the first wave of people entered, the people from the Sun clan, led by Sun Shua, began to move toward the entrance of the remains below. The Zhou clan and the Bai clan did not move. No one knew whether it was because they were not in a hurry or because of other reasons. However, just as Xiao Yan was patiently waiting for the people from the Sun clan to enter the remains, three familiar figures suddenly appeared in his sight. The expression on Xiao Yan's face under the black robe suddenly became sluggish when he saw these three figures. He had never imagined that he would actually meet them here. These three people were the three great beast kings of the Shilin mountain range, the Sky Eagle, the Flame Lion and Xionggang. Chapter 622. They have also come this time. Xiao Yan's old face involuntarily twitched under the black robe. He had never expected that these three fellows would actually be attracted by this desolate ancient remains. If it was during an ordinary time, Xiao Yan might feel a joy in his heart. However, the current situation caused Xiao Yan to be unable to smile. Despite the two miserable results from the previous two times, there were still quite a number of Band D experts following the Sun clan as they flew down. The densely packed heads were like locusts passing by. This time around, there were over a dozen other elite Do D other than the Sun clan. There were also an innumerable number of Band D experts following close behind. Tianying's trio were three of these countless number of Band D experts. Although the aura present was quite shocking at this moment, from the way Xiao Yan saw it, it did not mean that these people would be able to successfully enter the remains. On the contrary, the more half-step D there were, the more half-step D experts would be eroded by the blood fog. At that time, if anything were to happen, even with the strength of Tianying's group, it would be difficult for them to survive. These three fellows are really... Xiao Yan quietly cursed in his heart. He watched Tianying's trio follow the crowd and charge down. Only then did he bitterly clench his teeth. A thought passed through his heart, and the doqi within his body began to circulate. Immediately, the body under the black robe trembled slightly. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan, who was among the crowd, instantly disappeared from the sky. Bai Ying and Zhuo Bentang frowned from the direction of the Bai clan, and the Zhuo clan after Xiao Yan instantly disappeared. Both of their gazes looked at the spot where Xiao Yan had been standing earlier. The two of them looked over, and found that there was already nothing there. From the distribution of the surrounding people, there should have been a person there before their gazes looked over. Other than this, at a certain spot in the crowd, there was a human figure who was also wrapped in a black robe. The pair of eyes under the black robe stared at the spot where Xiao Yan had disappeared. His heart was deep in thought. Who is that person? He can actually disappear under this old man's watch. Who exactly is this person? Zhuo Bentang's gaze was still fixed on the empty space, a rare solemn look appearing in the depths of his old eyes. At this moment, Bai Ying was also staring at the void. No one knew what he was thinking in his heart. His gaze then swept across the crowd as if he was looking for someone. At this moment, below the crowd in the sky, a large number of people were swarming towards the entrance of the ruins. At the same time, the blood-colored lake below began to churn again. Chi-chi-chi. All of a sudden, pillars of blood that emitted a strong stench shot out once again. From the bottom to the top, they charged towards the swarming crowd in a haphazard manner. The crowd immediately turned chaotic. Everyone's faces carried a solemn expression. One by one, they raised the do-chi within their bodies and the seals on their palms changed. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky had already been covered by various kinds of powerful do skills. With the previous example, everyone had come prepared. In order to deal with those blood pillars, they had already made all the necessary preparations. However, they had clearly underestimated just how frightening those blood pillars were. Bang bang bang. Even though there were many Band D experts present, all of them were only able to break a small portion of those blood pillars with their combined strength. The remaining blood pillars used the most overbearing method to break the various do skills that were heading towards them. Although it was a formation, a mere Band D was far from enough to defeat it. Puff puff puff. Soon after, as dark red blood splattered across the sky, countless half-martial emperors were penetrated by the pillars of blood. As for the pillars of blood, they were extremely strange. Even if they did not injure any vital organs, they would emit a strange suction force that would directly absorb one's blood. Thus, at this moment, the majority of the half-martial emperors present had died from having their blood devoured by the pillars of blood. Amongst the chaotic crowd, Tianning and the other two were 9-star Band D. Their strength was quite extraordinary. Additionally, the three of them had great teamwork. Hence, they were not harmed by the blood pillars within a short period of time. However, this did not mean that they would have the opportunity to enter the desolate ancient remains. Above the lake of blood, numerous pillars of blood shot through the sky like enormous pythons. Every single time a pillar of blood shot through the sky, one or even more quasi-emperors would have their chests pierced through. In the blink of an eye, less than 100 quasi-emperors remained from the hundreds of quasi-emperors that had been there before. Being one of the 4 great clans, it was naturally extremely easy for the Sun clan to avoid those blood pillars with Sun Shuo personally leading the group. As for those 10+ elite Do-di, they relied on their great strength and were similarly unharmed. As for those half-martial emperors, with the exception of a very small number of groups, all the other groups that were alone were unable to avoid being targeted by the pillars of blood. Bang! Tianying's body flew back after his do technique was broken. Behind him, the Flamesure and Xionggang once again attacked. Powerful do techniques repeatedly struck a blood pillar that was charging over. Finally, the blood pillar was shattered by the combined strength of the 3 brothers when it was a couple of dozen feet in front of the 3 of them. However, before the 3 of them could catch their breath, the blood lake below once again churned. Another couple of blood pillars shot to the sky. This time around, they seemed to have a target as they charged explosively toward Tianying's group. Damn it. This strange thing will never be destroyed. Regardless of how many we break, it will still charge out of this blood lake. At the same time that the do technique in his hand once again flew out, the flame lion involuntarily cursed out loud. He exchanged glances with the Sky Eagle duo by the side and hurriedly turned his body. His waist twisted in a strange arc and narrowly dodged the 3 blood pillars that were charging in front of him. This won't do. We must be quick. We must be the first to enter the remains before this blood pillar attacks us. Tianying's expression was extremely solemn. The strength of this blood pillar caused him to feel a sense of helplessness that he had never felt before. Currently, a forceful attack was useless. Hence, he could only rely on speed to obtain victory. I will delay it. All of you should withdraw first. Xionggang roared furiously. His body suddenly shook and an earthen yellow do-chi immediately spluttered out. It swiftly agglomerated on the surface of his body. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a thick rock armor. But the Flamesure by the side was just about to open his mouth. However, before he could say anything, the body of Xionggang, who had just agglomerated an armor, was suddenly sent flying by a bright red blood pillar. Xionggang. The appearance of this scene caused the expressions of Tianying, and the flameshare to change drastically. The two of them exclaimed in unison. They turned their eyes but did not expect that other than the 3 blood pillars from earlier, another blood pillar had unknowingly charged toward them. Xionggang had been sent flying by this attack due to his carelessness. The two of them followed their gazes and looked over. At the end of the blood pillar, there were a total of 4 blood pillars. At this moment, they were surrounding Xionggang, who was in the middle. Looking over, the armor on Xiongang's body had already been completely destroyed by the attack earlier. Perhaps it was because of this armor that Xionggang was lucky enough to survive. However, the armor was broken and the 4 blood pillars surrounded Xionggang alone. Even if he were to go all out and resist, it was likely that he would not be able to survive. Immediately, the eyes of Tianying and the flameshare immediately turned bright red. They had lived together with Xionggang for an unknown number of years. Currently, their strength had yet to break through to the DD class. How could they bear to see one of them die like this? Immediately, Tianying roared furiously in his heart. He used his fastest speed to charge toward Xionggang. The flameshare, on the other hand, used all his strength to use his strongest Do skill to violently attack the blood pillar. However, this was just like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. There was no result at all. Damn it. Get lost. Turn around. If you have the ability, turn around and kill me. On top of being furious, the flameshare's mouth also emitted a furious roar. However, the 4 blood pillars remained indifferent. Xionggang, who was surrounded by them, not only had his armor broken after receiving the attack earlier, but his body had also suffered quite a serious injury. At this moment, he was also surrounded by the 4 blood pillars. There was no way for him to retreat. At the same time, Tianying's face was flushed red. The Do Qi in his body had already been circulated to the limit. However, there was still a small distance between him and Xionggang. However, the blood pillar appeared to be unable to continue waiting. Its bright red body suddenly twisted. Soon after, it violently smashed toward Xionggang with a lightning-like speed. Xionggang felt a wave of helplessness in his heart when he saw the blood pillar that was charging toward him. He knew that at this distance, it was impossible for him to self-destruct even if he wanted to. From the looks of it at this moment, other than waiting for death, there was nothing he could do to resist. No, the flameshares and Tianying's faces were crazy. The expression on their faces had become unusually distorted because of the grief and fury in their hearts. However, regardless of how hard they tried, it was ultimately useless. Xiongang's death was already set in stone. Given the distance between the two of them, it was impossible for them to take any action to salvage the situation. Xionggang slowly shut his eyes. Perhaps this would be able to reduce the endless pain that he would have to endure later on. If only Xiaoyan was here. That fellow seems to be able to do anything no matter what. The moment Xionggang shut his eyes, his heart inexplicably thought of Xiaoyan. However, he also knew that Xiaoyan had already left the Shilin mountain range. Currently, there was only them in this place. However, the next moment, swoosh! A thunderous roar that resounded across the sky was suddenly transmitted over. Soon after, the ferocious attack of the blood pillar forcefully missed. Haha, brother, it is not the time to despair yet. If you don't try, how do you know that it will definitely fail? A familiar soft laughter was transmitted from beside his ear. Suddenly, Xiongang's mind shook violently. His tightly shut eyes abruptly opened. A handsome face leisurely stood in front of him. Soon after, Xiongang's pupils abruptly shrunk. The emotions in his heart had also reached the peak in an instant. His heart was filled with disbelief as he looked at Xiaoyan in front of him. It was a long while later before Xiongang's hoarse voice slowly spoke. You. Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan. Chapter 623. Shu. Xionggang had just spat out these words from his mouth when the expression of Xiaoyan, who was wearing a black robe, immediately changed. He hurriedly gestured for the latter to keep quiet. Soon after, Xionggang quickly reacted and gently nodded his head. His somewhat simple and honest face was currently filled with a joyous smile. He knew that since Xiaoyan had appeared at this moment, it would not be a problem for the 3 of them to enter the desolate ancient remains. Even though they had not truly interacted with Xiaoyan for a long time, they had unknowingly become friends with each other. Moreover, Xiao Yan's strength caused them to be filled with confidence. This was especially so after the incident at the Eastern Wall where Xiao Yan had entered the hinterland of Xilin. The three of them firmly believed in Xiao Yan in their hearts. It seemed that as long as any trouble was placed in front of Xiao Yan, it would be easily solved. Even though they did not know where this confidence came from, it did not cause them to have the slightest doubt in their hearts. Haha, I really did not expect that you would actually appear here. Haha, I really have to thank you for saving my life. If it was not for you today, I'm afraid that the current me would have been under that blood pillar. Xiongang's somewhat pale face was filled with smiles as he stood up. He inhaled 2 deep breaths of air, and his mind swiftly recovered from the incident earlier. After which, his large palm violently patted Xiao Yan's shoulder. His gaze turned. In the distant empty space, Sky Eagle and Flame Lion had also discovered the commotion here at this moment. Seeing that Xionggang was fine, a joyous glow was emitted from the eyes of the two of them. Their bodies moved and they hurriedly flew over. The two of them approached and saw that Xionggang was indeed fine. Only then did the two of them let out a long sigh of relief. Their tensed hearts also suddenly relaxed. Haha, look at how nervous the two of you are. Am I not fine? Huh. Xionggang laughed when he saw the two people in front of him. His face involuntarily revealed an expression of lingering fear as he spoke. You are really a stubborn person. If it was not for this Mister's timely intervention earlier, it is likely that you would have already become another dead soul under that blood pillar. You actually still dare to laugh here. We should have really let that blood pillar take you in earlier. Although Tianing understood in his heart that Xionggang was only doing this to reassure them, he still involuntarily scolded when he heard this. After which, he turned his gaze and looked at Xiao Yan, whose back was facing them and whose body was hidden under a black robe. His gaze ruthlessly cut at Xionggang before exchanging glances with the Flame Lion by the side. The two of them nodded in unison. Soon after, they cupped their hands to the mysterious black-robed human figure in front of them. The both of us thank Elder for saving my younger brother's life. The expression on Xiongang's face immediately became dull when he heard this. Even Xiao Yan, who was in front of the three of them at this moment, involuntarily revealed a playful smile on his face under the black robe. Immediately, he slowly turned around in front of the respectful gazes of the two behind him. Soon after, a familiar handsome face appeared in front of Sky Eagle and the Flame Lion's eyes. Haha, these two old brothers, this little brother is really unable to accept this great gift from the both of you. The expressions on the faces of Sky Eagle and the Flame Lion froze the moment they saw this familiar face. Soon after, the two of them opened their mouths to exclaim. However, Xiao Yan was already prepared. The moment the two of them exclaimed, an invisible strength immediately sealed the empty space where the three of them were located. Any sound within it was naturally blocked. Xiao Yan, words that were filled with surprise were emitted from the mouths of the two of them. The expressions on their faces instantly became wild joy. They did not expect that they would actually meet Xiao Yan during this trip to the desolate ancient remains. Xiao Yan, it is really you. Sky Eagle's face was filled with disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yan in front of him. He did not expect that Xiao Yan would actually appear in the Xilin mountain range. Haven't you already passed through the Xilin mountain range? Why have you appeared here again? The Flame Lion by the side also walked forward with a face filled with surprise. However, soon after, he frowned slightly and asked with a somewhat doubtful tone. Upon hearing this, not only Sky Eagle, even Xionggang by the side also involuntarily frowned. Could it be that Xiao Yan in front of them did not pass through the Xilin mountain range? Xiao Yan smiled faintly as if he had guessed the thoughts of the three in front of him. Immediately, he smiled and explained to the three of them in front of him. Cuckoo, the three of you are thinking too much. Although I have indeed passed through the Xilin mountain range, I will naturally be able to return after leaving. Sky Eagle and the other two came to a sudden understanding when they heard this. However, Sky Eagle's expression involuntarily changed when he turned his eyes. This was because while the three of them were focused on conversing, the 4 blood pillars in the sky appeared to have been angered. They suddenly turned in the sky and the 4 blood pillars immediately charged toward Xiao Yan's group. From the looks of it, it seemed that they would not rest until they killed Xiao Yan's group. Damn it. I have nearly forgotten that now is not the time to talk. Everyone be careful. Those damn things are coming again. Sky Eagle's voice was solemn as he spoke. His body shook and the do-chi within his body once again spluttered out. At the same time, the Flame Lion and Xionggang by his side also maneuvered the do-chi within their bodies in preparation to face the 4 blood pillars that were about to arrive. However, just as the 3 of them were preparing to attack, Xiao Yan, who was currently standing behind the 3 of them, used his hand to gently pat Sky Eagle's shoulder. The latter's eyes hardened. Soon after, Xiao Yan blocked the 3 in front of him. Cuckoo, these 3 old brothers, leave this thing to me. Xiao Yan laughed faintly. His gaze calmly swept over the faces of the 3 of them. Immediately, it landed on the 4 blood pillars. The hand under his sleeves was slowly clenched. The fury that had been suppressed within his chest since the beginning had finally shown some unusual signs at this moment. He treated the Sky Eagle trio as his friends and naturally did not wish for any of them to be hurt. However, Xionggang had nearly lost his life to these strange blood pillars earlier. It was just as Xionggang had said. If it was not because Xiao Yan was coincidentally present today, he would really have no way to survive. Moreover, the Sky Eagle duo might even risk their lives for Xionggang. This was something that Xiao Yan was unwilling to see no matter what. However, the Sky Eagle trio involuntarily frowned in the face of Xiao Yan's actions. Even though they had some understanding of Xiao Yan's true strength, the strength of these blood pillars was even more frightening than the cold wind under the eastern wall back then. If Xiao Yan was careless, would it not? Xiao Yan, we. Cuckoo, does old brother Sky Eagle not believe in my ability? Ugh. However, just as Sky Eagle was about to open his mouth, Xiao Yan laughed softly, forcefully stopping the words that were about to reach his mouth. Immediately, Sky Eagle glanced at the Flame Lion and Xionggang beside him. He helplessly laughed bitterly. The 3 of them shifted their feet slightly, giving Xiao Yan the space in front of them. At the same time, other than the group of bandy experts near the lake, the other group of bandy experts in the sky were looking at the Sky Eagle trio below with doubtful faces. These 3 fellows were actually still standing there in a daze when they saw the blood pillars charging toward them. Were they seeking death? Of course, other than these bandy experts, the eyes of those elite Dodi present, including Zhuo Bentang and Bai Ying, had landed on the black-robed Xiao Yan below at this moment. No one could tell, but they were aware that the reason why the Sky Eagle trio had moved aside was likely because this mysterious black-robed person was about to personally intervene. Just who is this person? Even the old me is unable to detect his aura. Zhuo Bentang's eyes were cautious as he stared at Xiao Yan below. He involuntarily thought quietly in his heart. At the same time, Bai Ying's heart was also filled with doubt as he stared at Xiao Yan. The doubt in his heart was not smaller than Zhuo Bentang's. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face, which was covered by a black robe, was calm as he faced the 4 blood pillars that were about to arrive in front of him in the empty space below. On the other hand, Tianying and the other 2 behind him involuntarily felt a wave of worry in their hearts despite being clearly aware of Xiao Yan's great strength in their hearts. A thought passed through his mind, and the do-chi within the vortex within his body began to circulate. Following Xiao Yan's control, threads of tiny great Tao strength gradually appeared in the invisible empty space. Immediately, they were absorbed into Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky arrived in front of Xiao Yan's group in the blink of an eye. Seemingly having seen that Xiao Yan's group did not react, the blood pillars suddenly became furious. The aura on them also became increasingly frightening. However, in the next moment, when the 4 blood pillars ruthlessly pierced through the bodies of Xiao Yan's group, Xiao Yan suddenly waved his large hand under the black robe. Suddenly, as his palm cut through the empty space, a pitch-black great Tao strength swiftly condensed in the empty space and instantly transformed into 4 pitch-black tents. Soon after, the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky violently collided with the 4 tents that had suddenly appeared. However, in the next moment, the expected scene of the tents exploding did not occur. Instead, the 4 blood pillars actually disappeared the moment they came into contact with the tents. Immediately, everyone's eyes were stunned. Numerous gazes filled with disbelief stared fixedly at the 4 blood pillars that reached the sky. However, when the 4 blood pillars completely disappeared into the tents, Everyone focused their eyes. The 4 tents stood flat while the 4 blood pillars had completely disappeared. Chapter 6:24. Hua! Everyone in the sky was in an uproar. Many pairs of eyes that were filled with disbelief landed on the black-robed figure below. It was difficult to imagine that the blood pillars that had caused hundreds of Band D experts to lose their lives a moment ago would actually disappear in such a strange manner in front of this mysterious black-robed person. The blood pillars have actually disappeared. The group of Band D experts in the sky were stunned as they stared at the 4 dark black tents in front of Xiaoyan. They found it hard to believe that these 4 inconspicuous dark black tents had actually easily destroyed the 4 blood pillars that had killed hundreds of Band D experts. This matter was too shocking. Disappeared? What do you mean by disappeared? The blood pillars should have been swallowed. What a frightening fellow. Just who is he? The muscles on Zhuo Bentang's old face involuntarily twitched when he heard the voice that was transmitted from the crowd. He had clearly sensed an extremely strange energy being emitted from the 4 tents the instant the blood pillars touched them. This was the reason why the 4 blood pillars had completely disappeared within the tents. Great Tao energy. Moreover, this is the void Great Tao. At this moment, even Zhuolin, who was quietly standing beside Zhuo Bentang, could not help but look at Xiaoyan below. This was especially the case when his gaze landed on the 4 tents. His eyes involuntarily emitted a shocked glint. In the entire western region, there were many people who were stronger than Zhuolin. However, there were very few people who could truly cause Zhuolin to feel surprised. With Zhuolin's status and strength, he had already seen far too many elite Dodi. However, the number of people who could truly arouse his interest could be counted with one's fingers. It was these few people that could be counted with one's fingers that all controlled a powerful Great Way strength. Today, however, he had met an even more frightening person. The Void Great Tao. Even when placed among all the Great Tao energy, it was an existence that was ranked at the top. Compared to the Great Tao energy that he had seen in the past, it was not even worth mentioning. Young Master, I'm afraid this person will be our biggest opponent on this trip. Zhuo Bentang's eyes revealed a grave expression. The Great Tao strength was something that was hard to find. Even though he was a 3-star Dodi, he had yet to comprehend it. Now that he had seen it, his heart naturally did not dare to be careless. Moreover, from the looks of this black-robed person's attack, it was likely that his strength was quite strong. The other party might also be a 3-star Dodi, or even stronger than him. Facing an opponent of this level, he could not afford to be careless. If we become enemies with him, he will naturally become our opponent. However, if we can become friends with him, then perhaps we will be able to gain quite a bit from this trip. Zhuolin narrowed his eyes. Compared to Zhuo Bentang's seriousness, he was much more relaxed. No one would be willing to become enemies with a Dodi. It would naturally be best if they could become friends. However, if they could not, they would definitely not become enemies with him. Otherwise, no one would be able to easily endure the fury of a Dodi. Young Lord wants to join forces with him. However, we do not know his true identity. If he has other thoughts, won't we be in trouble? Zhuo Bentang involuntarily frowned when he heard Zhuolin's words. Traveling with a person whose identity they did not know would ultimately be unable to guarantee their safety. Cuckoo trouble? We are already in trouble. If we do not join forces with him, he will definitely stand against us. However, if we take the initiative to join forces with him, we might still have other choices. After all, even if he is also an elite Dodi, he will not be able to fight against the combined strength of the 4 great clans by himself. Zhuolin coldly laughed. He had already considered this point in his mind. However, even if we join forces with this fellow, won't we have to face the combined strength of the other 3 clans? Once they join forces, it is likely that we will be in a very passive position. So what if we join forces? Since when has our Zhuo clan not been a thorn in the eyes of the other 3 clans? As long as we can join forces with him on this trip, we will still be the winner. At the very most, we will split everything that we obtain with this fellow in a 40-60 split. Zhuolin's expression was calm as he continued to speak after Zhuo Bentang's words sounded. These things that an ordinary person would need to think about seemed to have already been arranged by Zhuolin. Zhuo Bentang's heart began to admire this young master of his when he heard Zhuo Lin speak without any hesitation. With such a mind, why would his Zhuo clan need to worry about not being able to prosper? Young lord's intelligence is outstanding. This subordinate admires you greatly. Suddenly, Zhuo Bentang took a step back and actually cupped his hands toward Zhuo Lin in midair. A surprised expression flashed across the latter's eyes when he saw this. However, he ultimately laughed coldly in his heart. He had seen quite a number of people who flattered him. It was just that he did not expect that Zhuo Bentang, a 3-star Dodi, would actually lower himself to do such a thing. However, the more he acted in this manner, the more Zhuo Lin avoided him in his heart. Now is not the time to be happy. Instead of saying such nonsense, why don't you think about how to get closer to this person? Otherwise, no matter how much we take the initiative, we will only be rejected by him. Zhuo Lin let out a faint cold snort. Immediately he ceased speaking. Instead, his eyes stared intently at Xiaoyan below. There was a glint flowing deep within his eyes. At the same time, on the other side, the head of the Bai clan, Bai Ying, also revealed a surprised expression as he looked at Xiaoyan in the empty space below. However, compared to the former, the corner of Bai Ying's mouth carried a vague smile at this moment. He had already paid attention to everyone in the city before they had left. His aim was to see if Xiaoyan was among them. Unfortunately, with the Great Way strength acting as a barrier, he could only return empty-handed no matter how he searched. But now, Xiaoyan had taken the initiative to reveal his grand Dao. For Bai Ying, who had seen this tent before, there was no need to even think about it. He immediately recognized the black-robed person in the sky. It was definitely Xiaoyan. This guy has hidden himself well. With the Great Way strength, even I am unable to detect him. Fortunately, the people from the Sun clan have already entered the ruins. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't even have the chance to enter the ruins today. Bai Ying laughed. He glanced at the empty space above the entrance of the remains. Earlier, the members of the Sun clan had taken the lead to enter the remains. It was because of this that Xiaoyan's identity was able to be hidden. The smile on the corner of Bai Ying's mouth gradually disappeared. At the same time, Xiaoyan's dark black eyes seemed to have sensed something as they swept across everyone in the sky. When they swept past Bai Ying, Xiaoyan's eyes paused for a moment. Immediately, they quickly landed on Zhuo Lin. Although Bai Ying and Zhuo Bentang were both 3-star Dodi, for some unknown reason, the only person present who made Xiaoyan feel pressured was not Zhuo Lin alone. Immediately, a solemn expression involuntarily surged deep within Xiaoyan's dark black eyes. Although he did not know what that strange feeling was, Xiaoyan did not doubt his intuition. This Zhuo Lin is likely not easy to deal with. Chapter 625. After a couple of consecutive attacks by Xiaoyan, the blood pillar that soared high into the sky gradually scattered. Soon after, the blood lake below also recovered its calmness. Although this was the case, the hearts of everyone who was still standing on the surface of the lake began to feel increasingly anxious. With the experience from the previous 2 times, they already knew that when the blood pillar fell, the strange blood fog would officially appear soon after. Sure enough, when everyone's eyes landed, a bright red blood fog gradually drifted out from the deep hole below. At this moment, the expressions of these experts standing in the air changed one after another. At the same time, everyone circulated the Do Qi within their bodies and agglomerated a Do Qi film on the surface of their bodies, wrapping around their entire bodies. Everyone's expression was grave as they looked at the bright red blood fog that was slowly drifting in the air below. Even though they were a great distance away, the dense stench that was emitted from the blood fog still caused their noses to be piercing. At this moment, the expressions of Tianying and the other 2 standing beside Xiaoyan involuntarily changed once again. Compared to the strange blood pillar earlier, this blood fog was even more frightening, causing one's heart to feel fear. How should we deal with this thing? Although your great Dao strength can block the blood pillar, this blood fog is after all an invisible thing that is difficult to grasp. It is impossible to completely block it outside. Tianying's expression was grave. He could only try his luck when faced with this blood fog. He wanted to see if he could charge into the entrance of the remains before this blood fog affected the Do Qi within his body. Haha, 3 old brothers, you can rest assured that with me around, this blood fog can forget about entering even the slightest bit of your bodies. However, Xiaoyan merely smiled faintly in the face of this. It seemed that he was not concerned about this blood fog. Immediately, before the three people beside him could recover, Xiaoyan waved his sleeve. 3 black lights immediately rushed out. Soon after, they covered the bodies of the 3 people in front of him. Tianying and the other 2 immediately recovered. The 3 pairs of eyes swept over each other. At this moment, they saw that the 3 of them were wearing the same large black robe that Xiaoyan was wearing. The 3 of them involuntarily raised their eyebrows when they saw this. Xiaoyan smiled slightly. He took the lead to turn around and swiftly flew towards the entrance of the remains below. Old brothers, you must remember that the empty space robes on your bodies can only be maintained for 15 minutes. During this period of time, the empty space robes will be able to hide all the auras on your bodies. The blood fog will also be isolated outside. I believe that this 15 minutes is sufficient for us to enter the remains. Tianying and the other 2 immediately nodded when they heard this. At the same time, there was an additional fiery heat in their eyes when they looked at the entrance of the remains below. Tianying. If we have the opportunity in the future, the 3 of us. We. Tianying's words undoubtedly represented the intentions of the other 2. Yan Shi and Xiong Gang by the side nodded heavily after Tianying's words were emitted from his mouth. Tianying and the other 2 actually once again respectfully cupped their hands together and bowed to Xiaoyan in front of the gazes of countless experts in the sky. Xiaoyan was involuntarily startled when he saw this. He immediately waved his large sleeve. An invisible force immediately swept out and hurriedly lifted the 3 of them in front of him. Only then did he smile and say, "It is merely a small matter. Why should the 3 of you be bothered by it? Moreover, the 3 of you are my friends. As the saying goes, one should sacrifice oneself for a friend. I am merely doing my best. It is nothing." Tianying and the other 2 involuntarily smiled when they heard this. Just as they were about to speak, many miserable cries were suddenly transmitted from the empty space below, interrupting the 4 of them. Ah! 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 Xiaoyan immediately frowned when his eyes fell. Indeed, the most troublesome thing was not whether the few of them would be eroded by the blood fog. Instead, it was the bandy experts below. Let's leave quickly. The dou qi within the bodies of those few fellows is about to explode. My empty space robe is unable to block that damn thing. Let's quickly descend. Xiaoyan's expression was somewhat grave as he spoke in a deep voice. Immediately, Tianying and the other 2 did not dare to hesitate any longer. Their bodies moved, and they swiftly flew towards the entrance of the remains below. Xiaoyan's eyes were grave as they once again swept over those bandy experts below, whose bodies were swiftly swelling. Just as he was about to move, the expression in his eyes involuntarily changed. He suddenly turned his head. Under the cover of his black robe, a pair of sharp eyes suddenly looked towards the black mass of people in the sky. He could clearly sense that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from that spot earlier. Who is it? Although Xiaoyan had turned his head in time, the owner of that pair of eyes had already turned away. At this moment, all that Xiaoyan could see was a large group of bandy experts standing high in the empty space, overlooking everything that was happening below. Humph! A cold snort that was neither soft nor heavy was emitted from Xiaoyan's nose. After which, his body twisted and he turned into a ray of light. He carried a lightning-like speed as he swiftly charged towards the entrance of the remains below. Bang bang bang. Soon after, the wild and violent dou qi within the bodies of those bandy experts in the empty space below, who had been eroded by the blood fog, also erupted uncontrollably at this moment. One by one, the bandy experts exploded like human bombs. Immediately, an extremely destructive and frightening energy storm once again swept over this empty space. This time around, Xiaoyan was no longer as calm as before in the face of this powerful energy storm. At such a distance, the strength that they had to endure was the combined strength of those bandy experts exploding together. If they were the slightest bit careless, it was likely that even Xiaoyan would suffer quite a lot. The powerful energy storm crazily wreaked havoc in the sky from all directions. The invisible space was like glass shattering with a bang. In the blink of an eye, the entire place collapsed within the endless void. Endless darkness covered the entire place, causing shock to spread in everyone's hearts. Even though all the bandy experts were doing their best to block this frightening storm, it was after all the energy released from over a dozen bandy experts exploding together. Under this energy, all those below the strength of a 7-star bandy were instantly and mercilessly killed in the sky. Of course, Xiaoyan was an exception. The black robes that were draped over Tianying's group were formed from Xiaoyan's tent. Their effects were naturally extraordinary. Although they were unable to completely block the strength of this storm, they were more or less effective. Moreover, Tianying's group were advanced 9-star ban emperors. Although it was unavoidable for them to suffer some injuries when they used their full strength, they were ultimately in a much better state than the other bandy experts. As for Xiaoyan himself, the instant the energy storm arrived, Xiaoyan immediately took out 3 tents. Soon after, a small half of the energy was blocked by the tents. After that, by relying on his powerful physical strength and the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor, Xiaoyan was able to forcefully block this attack. Of course, even though this was the case, Xiaoyan still involuntarily emitted a muffled groan from his throat. A trace of fishy sweetness also entered his mouth. Chapter 626. That frightening energy storm continued for over 10 minutes. Everyone in the area was deeply shocked by this energy storm. When the storm dissipated, the entire world became pitch black, just like night. At a glance, the land within a radius of 1,000 miles was originally a lively mountain range. However, at this moment, it had been forcefully flattened by the storm. The blood lake below churned as though it was mocking the experts in the sky. The remaining 100+ experts in the sky had pale faces. Almost all of them had fresh blood hanging from the corner of their mouths. There were even some who had managed to preserve their lives, but ended up with seriously injured bodies. Even if they wanted to recover, they did not know how long they would have to wait. When the experts in the sky saw this scene below, quite a number of them began to think of retreating in their hearts. Although the treasures were good, they needed to be alive to obtain them. Currently, they could not even pass the first hurdle. How could they even talk about entering the remains and fighting for the treasures inside? At this moment, Zhuo Benteng and Zhuolin by the side were frowning. Both of them used their gazes to stare intently at Xiaoyan below. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. From the way they saw it, the strength of this black-robed person in front of them was likely at least a 3-star Dodi. However, why was he actually forced back in one strike when faced with that energy storm? This was not quite right. What is going on with this fellow's strength? Hasn't he already comprehended the Great Way energy? Why does his strength not appear to be that of an elite Dodi? Zhuo Benteng's brows were tightly knit together. He could not understand why this black-robed person, who had clearly grasped the Great Way energy, would be forced back by that energy storm. Moreover, from the looks of it, the black-robed person should be injured. The moment Zhuo Benteng spoke, Zhuolin seemed to have thought of something. A glint flashed in his sharp eyes, and he let out a cold snort. Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance." It is true that he has grasped the Great Way energy. However, who told you that one must be an elite Dodi in order to grasp the Great Way energy? The look in Zhuo Benteng's eyes froze. Then Zhuolin opened his mouth again and said, "Don't worry. As long as some people have sufficient talent and a comprehension ability that exceeds an ordinary person, it is not impossible for them to comprehend the strength of the Great Way before they are a Dodi. After all, even in this entire continent, no one can be certain that a Bandi is unable to comprehend the strength of the Great Way." Young master, you mean this guy is actually a half-martial emperor, who has comprehended the Great Tao energy? Hearing Zhuolin's words, Zhuo Benteng's face was suddenly shocked, and he felt a burst of disbelief in his heart. Seeing this, Zhuolin frowned and nodded slightly. That is extremely possible. After all, a person who is unable to unleash the strength of a Dodi, but has grasped the strength of the Great Way, unless his talent is shocking, there is no other answer. Heavens, if this is really the case, isn't this fellow a little too frightening? A person who had grasped the strength of the Great Way even though his strength had yet to reach the Dodi class. This kind of person would definitely become a person that various factions would fight to rope in. Being a Bandi, he had already grasped the strength of the Great Way. If his strength were to reach the Do D class, would he not be able to defy the heavens? While Zhuo Bentang's heart was feeling shocked by Xiao Yan's strength, a large cluster of scarlet-red hot blood fog slowly floated out from the deep underground hole below, seemingly intending to give everyone a blow. It emitted a dense stench that caused one to feel nauseous as it slowly flew toward everyone in the empty sky. This time around, before the blood fog could come close, the expressions of the remaining Band D experts in the empty sky suddenly changed drastically. The expressions on their faces were as though they had seen something frightening. All of them hurriedly dragged their injured bodies and swiftly ran toward the sky. At this moment, even Tianning and the other two involuntarily felt some disappointment and regret in their hearts after seeing Xiao Yan's somewhat pale face. Although they knew that there were quite a number of treasures within the remains, at the same time, they also knew that if it was not for Xiao Yan lending a hand at a critical moment during this trip to the desolate ancient remains, they would have long since died under the blood pillar. How would they end up in such a state now? Although the three of them were not strong enough, they did not wish to implicate Xiao Yan. The latter's potential and strength were far from what the three of them could compare with. If it were not for the three of them, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not have split his strength and ended up being injured. The three pairs of eyes under the black robes exchanged glances with each other. Given the tacit understanding between the three of them, even just a glance was sufficient for them to express many things. Hence, the three of them immediately nodded in unison. After which, they turned their eyes to Xiao Yan. Tianning, who was the leader, opened his mouth once again. However, unlike before, the three of them chose to withdraw this time around. Brother Xiao Yan, it looks like the three of us are not fortunate enough to enjoy the treasures in the remains. A regretful expression appeared on Tianying's face as he stared intently at Xiao Yan in front of him, and said in a serious voice. Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he heard this. He immediately asked, Brother Tianning, may I know what you mean by this? Haha, Brother Xiao Yan, there is no need to overthink. I just feel that the three of us are not strong enough. I believe that even if we enter the remains, we will not be able to obtain any benefits. If we are unlucky, we might even lose our lives. Hence, I feel that. Brother Tianning, don't worry. I have said that with me around, the blood fog will not be able to harm you at all. Don't worry, I will definitely bring all of you in alive. Similarly, I will be able to bring all of you back alive. As soon as Xiao Yan finished speaking, he immediately called out to Guyu in his heart. Old Gu, lend me a hand. Guyu did not hesitate after hearing Xiao Yan's words. A soft acknowledgement was emitted from his heart. A thought passed through his mind, and a dense white flame immediately rose from within Xiao Yan's body with a puff sound. Ha! Xiao Yan let out a stern cry in his heart. Before Tianying's trio in front of him could recover, he suddenly waved his large hand. Soon after, a dense white flame immediately spluttered out of Xiao Yan's palm at the same time the three of them recovered. In the blink of an eye, it had already covered the entire empty space. Under the control of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, the dense white flame turned into a circular fire barrier that swiftly spread with Xiao Yan at the center. After which, it gradually descended under Xiao Yan's control. Wherever it passed, the blood fog that had drifted upwards would turn into white smoke with a chi-chi sound and disappear. Finally, the enormous dense white flame barrier completely sealed the enormous hole below in front of everyone's stunned expressions. The blood fog that continued to surge out from within was completely incinerated by it. At the same time, Zhuo Bentang and Zhuo Lin in the sky were staring at Xiao Yan in the empty space below. At this moment, both of their eyes revealed a surprised expression. This is a heavenly flame? Chapter 627. Xiao Yan's body was as steady as Mount Tai as he stood in the air in this world that was shrouded by clouds and mist. He remained unmoved no matter how hard the great beauty in front of him pulled. Husband, let's go quickly. We don't know where Sun Air is now. We must find her as soon as possible. Kai Lin's beautiful face revealed an anxious expression. Her lotus root-like snow-white arm was exposed to the air. Her tender hand tightly grabbed Xiao Yan's wrist as she tried her best to bring Xiao Yan away from this place. At this moment, the expression in Xiao Yan's dark black eyes appeared indifferent. However, his gaze still involuntarily swept over the familiar lovely body in front of him. Only then did he slowly inhale a deep breath of air. He gently shook his head and slowly said in a calm yet firm tone, "You are right. You are right. Let go. You are not Kai Lin." The movement of the great beauty in front of Xiao Yin immediately became sluggish after these words were uttered. A couple of breaths later, she finally released her hand, which was tightly holding Xiao Yan's wrist. Soon after, the surrounding fog swiftly gathered around Kai Lin. In the blink of an eye, the human figure in front of Xiao Yin had transformed into a cluster of blurry human figures whose face could not be seen clearly. At the same time, a somewhat indifferent, unfamiliar female voice was spat out from her mouth. "How did you discover it?" Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled when these words were uttered. The expression on his face involuntarily changed. Surprise involuntarily surged into his dark black eyes. His eyes stared intently at the fog in front of him that had the appearance of a human. The shock in his heart was unimaginable. This formation, has actually gained sentience." It was a long while later before Xiao Yan finally revealed a surprised expression as he spoke in a deep voice. His tone was grave. It was likely that no one would be able to maintain a calm state of mind in the face of such a shocking matter. He had heard of a Do technique transforming into a spirit, but he had never heard of a formation that could do so. If this was really the case, would he not be in danger if this person in front of him wanted to attack him? The cluster of cream-white fog surged slightly after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. It immediately became quiet. However, soon after, a soft laughter with unknown meaning was emitted from the fog. At the same time, the unfamiliar and indifferent female voice was quickly emitted. "Perhaps." Hiss. Xiao Yan involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air under the black robe when he heard this ambiguous answer. His originally frowning eyebrows were tightly knit together at this moment. The seriousness in his heart did not reduce because of this. After all, regardless of whether the other party was the spirit of this formation or not, it was likely that it would not be difficult for her to deal with him. Xiao Yin could only helplessly withdraw his thoughts after thinking for a while in vain. His breathing was a little heavy as he inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyelids were lowered and a glint flowed deep within his dark black eyes. Only then did he look at the cluster of fog in front of him. He paused for a moment before the corner of his mouth was lifted into a smile. "The reason I am able to recognize that you are a fake is because Kai Lin does not address me as husband. She has always called me by my name." The cream-white human figure in front of him involuntarily fluctuated after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. Immediately, a soft laugh was emitted from the human figure. It seemed to be mocking itself, but it also seemed to represent that this was the case. Xiao Yan involuntarily frowned when he saw this. A thought passed through his heart, and the Do Qi within the vortex within his body began to quietly circulate at this moment. He was prepared to deal with this strange formation in front of him at any moment. "There is no need to be nervous. You can leave this place." The faint voice of a woman was emitted from the fog in front of him after seemingly sensing the Do Qi fluctuation within Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened. Soon after this woman's voice sounded, the fog that filled the space in front of Xiao Yan seemed to have received an order and swiftly scattered to the sides. A 2-meter-wide path appeared in front of Xiao Yan. A surprised expression involuntarily flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw this. He frowned slightly and his spiritual strength spread out. It swiftly spread toward the end of the path in front of him. After the fog scattered, the speed at which Xiao Yan's spiritual strength spread out seemed to have unknowingly increased. As expected, within a couple of breaths, the spiritual strength that Xiao Yan had spread out swiftly found the exit of the formation that he had sensed earlier. Xiao Yan's expression was immediately startled when he found the exit of the formation. It was unexpected that the formation in front of him would actually take the initiative to allow him to leave the formation. This was really strange. You are really letting me leave. I don't believe that you, as the spirit of the formation, are able to do such a disobedient thing." Xiao Yan's voice hesitated for an instant before he finally could not resist asking. The cluster of fog in front of him involuntarily became silent when it heard this. Soon after, a lovely laughter was swiftly emitted from within. "Ha ha ha ha, why? Are you afraid that I will scheme to harm you? Since I am the spirit of the formation, I can directly attack you if I want to deal with you. Why should I waste so much effort?" Wouldn't that be asking for a rebuff? Of course, if you are unwilling to leave, I can also allow you to stay forever. Towards the end, the tone actually caused one to involuntarily feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately, even Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily turned cold. However, after pondering for a moment in his heart, he still carefully lifted his feet and slowly walked towards the end of the tunnel in front of him. Only after he walked 100 steps did Xiao Yan turn his head and look behind him. The scattered fog gradually spread, causing the current Xiao Yan to have no way of retreat. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiao Yan's face changed once again. However, in the end he still helplessly moved his body. As his spiritual strength spread out, he swiftly flew towards the direction of the exit. When Xiao Yan's figure gradually disappeared into the fog, a milky white fog gradually condensed at a certain spot in the formation. However, unlike before, this time around, a beautiful lady wearing a long dress appeared. The lady was wearing a long golden dress. Various kinds of formation pictures were drawn on it. The most mysterious thing was that those formation pictures were actually faintly flickering with a bright light. Ah, the spirit of the formation. What an interesting person. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was on the other side, flew at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already seen a dazzling white light at the end of the tunnel in front of him. It can't be wrong. This is indeed the exit. Xiao Yan cried out in surprise in his heart. Soon after, he instantly used the sky extinction steps. In the next instant, Xiao Yan had already appeared in front of the white light. As a smile appeared on his face, his body moved forward and instantly entered the white light in front of him. Chapter 628. Are you even worthy? The faint voice continued to resound beside everyone's ears. Although these words sounded calm, anyone could sense the coldness and disdain contained within them. Indeed, in front of a 4-star Dodi, they, as ordinary Dodi, were really nothing in his eyes. Humph! A cold snort was emitted from Xiao Yan's nose. He took a step forward. At the same time, the thick white flame under his feet spread in all directions like ripples of water. At the same time, a powerful aura and pressure locked onto Zhuo Bentang below. Seeing this, the expression of Zhuo Lin, who was high up in the sky, involuntarily changed. Zhuo Bentang was the strongest person from their Zhuo clan on this trip. From the looks of it, this mysterious 4-star Dodi clearly intended to continue attacking Zhuo Bentang. If Zhuo Bentang were to fall here, not only would their Zhuo clan be unable to enter the desolate ancient remains this time around, even the overall strength of the clan would be affected. Once this was the case, even if Zhuo Lin was the heir of the Zhuo clan and had the backing of the Heavenly Sword sect, it was likely that he would also be severely punished. Even his position within the clan would be affected. When he thought of this, even with Zhuo Lin's character, he could not help but feel a wave of seriousness in his heart at this moment. Although he usually had a high status in the clan, this was not only because he had the support of the Heavenly Sword sect, but also because he never made any mistakes in the clan. Otherwise, the powerful elders in the clan would not be so afraid of him. Now that Zhuo Bentang was to die, Zhuo Lin would naturally have made a big mistake within the clan. On the other hand, those elders would have something to do. This elder, I am the young master of the Endless City's Zhuo clan, Zhuo Lin. The person below is, Endless City's Zhuo family, one of the 4 great families. This old man has heard of this before. But what does your bullshit Lin have to do with this old man? This old man has only heard that there's a punk called Xiao Yan who caused so much trouble that even the 4 great sects couldn't have peace. As for what kind of thing you are. Although Xiao Yan was already aware of Zhuo Lin's identity, he still deliberately acted as though he did not know him at this moment. His old disdainful words slowly drifted out. Under the black robe, Xiao Yan's expression involuntarily changed. He had borrowed Guyu's voice to scold Zhuo Lin, but he did not expect Guyu to follow up with his words. Moreover, his words had instantly shifted the focus of their conversation to him. At the same time, the mocking words from Xiao Yan and Guyu caused the expression on Zhuo Lin's face to turn green. Even his body, which was hidden under his sleeves, involuntarily trembled. Just what kind of training genius was Zhuo Lin? Even in the entire western region, there were many people who knew about him. He was even groomed by the Heavenly Sword sect, one of the 4 great sects, as the next chief of the sect. Today, however, someone dared to insult him in front of so many people, and even dared to say that he had never heard of him. This caused Zhuolin to feel that he had lost all face. Immediately, a fury surged from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, the powerful Douqi within Zhuolin's body suddenly churned. Even the expression on his face was filled with viciousness and resentment. After so many years, you are the only person who has truly incited the fury in my heart. After Zhuolin spat out the extremely cold words, a soul-shaking buzzing sound immediately sounded in the space around him. Soon after, everyone in the area could clearly see numerous pitch-black spatial cracks rapidly appearing in the space. At the same time, the energy in the world swiftly gathered there. In the blink of an eye, dozens of golden longswords that emitted a sharp sword aura slowly floated in the space above. As these longswords slowly rotated, a glaring cold light was reflected from them in all directions, causing one to feel a chill in one's heart. Deep within one's heart, one involuntarily felt a shock because of these strange golden longswords. Just the cold light reflected from these longswords caused one's spirit to be so frightened. It was difficult to imagine just how shocking the strength of these golden swords would be when they were truly unleashed. The moment Xiaoyan saw these golden swords, he instantly understood in his heart. No wonder the Sky Sword sect would groom Zhuolin as the next sect leader. This was not only because of his strength. What caused Xiaoyan to feel surprised was that Zhuolin in front of him had actually practiced the Sky Sword sect's sect leader's famous Do skill, the defensive sword skill, to such an extent. Just this point alone was enough to allow Zhuolin to be proud of himself in many aspects compared to those of the same generation. At the very least, according to what Xiaoyan knew, the number of people within the Sky Sword sect who could agglomerate over 10 golden swords using this defensive sword skill could be counted with one's fingers. In the crowd high in the sky, there was a human figure who was similarly wrapped in a black robe. At this moment, a pair of eyes that were revealed under the black robe were also staring intently at Zhuolin in the arena. Deep within his eyes, a deep seriousness was also revealed. At this moment, even Xiaoyan had no choice but to admit that Zhuolin's training talent was indeed so high that it was frightening. However, if he wanted to use this to defeat the current Xiaoyan, it was somewhat unrealistic. Today, I will let you experience the strength of my Sky Sword sect's defensive sword skill. A cold snort was emitted from Zhuolin's mouth. Soon after, one could see him suddenly waving his sleeves. Immediately, over a dozen golden swords that were emitting a glaring golden light around him suddenly moved. They carried an extremely sharp and frightening might as they instantly transformed into numerous golden meteors that cut through the empty air and swiftly charged toward Xiaoyan at this moment. Xiaoyan's expression changed. Haha. Xiaoyan's nose involuntarily emitted a faint cold laugh when he saw this. Immediately, he gently shook his head in front of the countless number of experts in the area, facing the dozen-plus golden swords that were swiftly shooting toward him. Immediately, his tone was neither light nor heavy as he slowly said, "What are you waiting for?" Then he slowly said, "These words might be quite powerful for your heavenly sword sect's sect master, Jianming. If it were you, it would just be a joke." As soon as these words were spoken, Zhuolin's face, which was already filled with anger, immediately revealed a faint killing intent. Then he couldn't help but let out a low roar. Then he roared at Xiaoyan in a crazed manner. Defensive sword skill. Kill. As the roar fell, the sharp aura on the dozen or so golden swords became even more domineering. However, Xiaoyan still shook his head in disdain. When the dozen or so golden swords arrived in front of him, he slowly raised a finger and smiled. Then, a clear word floated out from Xiaoyan's mouth. Freeze. Following Xiaoyan's order, the dozen or so golden swords seemed to have received Xiaoyan's order. The golden swords that were originally shooting toward Xiaoyan instantly froze in the air in front of Xiaoyan. Then, Xiaoyan slowly retracted his extended finger. Under the countless shocked gazes in the world, the dozen or so golden swords that were fixed in the air in front of Xiaoyan actually exploded into golden light fragments that filled the sky. Then they gradually disappeared from this world. Soon after, Xiaoyan slowly raised his gaze and once again looked at Zhuolin. He slowly said in front of the latter's solemn eyes that were filled with viciousness. "You said earlier that I am the first person who has truly angered you. Since this is the case, The fire started because of me, so it will also be extinguished because of me. After his faint voice fell, Xiao Yan's mind moved. Immediately, the dense white heavenly flame suddenly swept out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it had already surrounded Zhuolin, who was currently in the Zhuo clan's group. Without any explanation, just as he was about to move, the unique ice flame of the bone-chilling flame swept out. In the next moment, Zhuolin's body was covered by a layer of solid blue ice. Even though he did not die, he was already seriously injured. Chapter 629. Let's go. In the sky, Xiao Yan withdrew his gaze indifferently as he spoke in an indifferent tone. Immediately, he looked towards the entrance of the remains below. Given the strength that Xiao Yan currently possessed, he could easily kill Zhuolin, and even everyone from the Zhuo clan. However, Xiao Yan did not do so. As someone of the same generation, Xiao Yan's pride did not allow him to borrow the strength of others to kill an opponent who was stronger than him. From Xiao Yan's point of view, the best way to defeat an opponent was to rely on one's own strength. Only by truly surpassing the opponent would it be considered a defeat. Otherwise, regardless of how many tricks he had up his sleeves, he would only be able to kill his opponent and not defeat him. Of course, doing so would eliminate any hidden dangers. However, at the same time, Xiao Yan would not gain any growth. If one wanted to become strong, one must first learn to respect one's opponent. Only by respecting one's opponent would one be able to see oneself clearly. The path of cultivation was not easy and everyone needed a mirror. A sufficiently strong opponent would undoubtedly become the brightest and most transparent mirror. Under the suppression of the heavenly flame, the scarlet blood fog within the cave was completely refined into nothingness by the bone-chilling flame. Xiao Yan and the Sky Eagle trio behind him also swiftly arrived in front of the entrance of the remains. At this moment, countless experts behind the four of them hurriedly followed after seeing that the blood fog had been suppressed. Now that the strange blood pillar was no longer present, and the blood fog was suppressed by the heavenly flame, was this not the best time to enter the remains? Of course, even though everyone had such thoughts in their hearts, they did not dare to get too close to Xiao Yan's group. After all, they had personally witnessed Xiao Yan's strength a moment ago. If they angered Xiao Yan who was in front of them, he would turn around and slap them. Given the strength of these people, they did not think that they had the chance to survive a strike from Xiao Yan. At this moment, the black-robed person who had been hiding in the crowd earlier, was quietly standing within this crowd. The powerful aura within Xiao Yan's body gradually disappeared after he arrived in front of the entrance of the remains. At the same time, a paleness involuntarily surged onto Xiao Yan's face under the black robe. Using Guyu's strength in this manner was quite a big burden on Xiao Yan's body. After the strength was removed, Xiao Yan's body was like a deflated ball. Although he still appeared tough on the outside, he was actually weak on the inside. Xiao Yan, are you alright? The Sky Eagle trio had sensed the strangeness of Xiao Yan's body the moment the powerful aura was transmitted from Xiao Yan's body. The Xiao Yan in front of them seemed to have suddenly become a different person. Not only had his strength become extremely frightening, but the feeling that he gave off had also become extremely frightening. This feeling was similar to the strength that Xiao Yan had displayed outside the eastern wall deep within the Shilin mountain range back then. At the same time that they were shocked by his strength, their hearts involuntarily felt an unfamiliar chill. I am fine. I am just a little weak. Xiao Yan, who was covered by the black robe, gently shook his head. A familiar voice was once again emitted. In an instant, the unfamiliar feeling that lingered in the hearts of the Sky Eagle trio immediately scattered. Instead, it was replaced by a familiar feeling that was no different from before. The Sky Eagle trio involuntarily frowned in the face of this strange change on Xiao Yan's body. Fortunately, this was not the first time that they had seen Xiao Yan in such a state. They nodded. Their eyes involuntarily swept over Xiao Yan's body. Unfortunately, even though they intended to probe, any probing of their auras was useless under the obstruction of the black robe. The three of them helplessly withdrew their gazes. Only then did they withdraw their thoughts. At the same time, Xiao Yan, whose back was facing the three of them, also turned his eyes to the entrance of the remains below, which was close at hand. Only when they approached this deep and serene cave, did everyone finally see clearly that although this cave appeared deep and serene, There were circles of invisible spatial ripples on the space that was at the same level as the surface. This was the true entrance to the remains. Huff. Xiaoyan gently exhaled. The pair of pitch-black eyes under the black robe once again looked towards the Sky Eagle trio beside him. The three of them sensed Xiaoyan's gaze shooting over. They also lifted their gazes at the same time, meeting Xiaoyan's gaze in the air. My three old brothers, it is time to enter the remains. After entering, the three of you must follow closely behind me. We are still completely unaware of the situation within the remains. Just from the Blood Lake Great Formation outside, it is likely that there are even more formations within the remains. If we are not careful, it is likely that we will be consigned to eternal damnation. It was not that Xiaoyan did not want to hear these words. After all, just the formation at the entrance of the remains was already so powerful. It was not difficult to imagine just how powerful the formation within would be. If it was just Xiaoyan's own strength, he might be able to rely on the advantage of the heavenly flame to barely suppress this Blood Lake Great Formation. However, if it was the formations within the remains, he did not dare to be certain. Moreover, Guyu had already said that the attack earlier was the last time that he would help Xiaoyan. In the future, Xiaoyan could only rely on himself. Hence, he needed to be careful. Tianning and the other two behind him nodded with solemn expressions when they heard this. They were naturally able to understand the meaning behind Xiaoyan's words. They did not dare to be careless. Xiaoyan withdrew his gaze after seeing the three of them nod. He immediately exhaled a deep breath of air. His body moved, and he slowly descended. He slowly entered the remains in front of everyone's eyes. The Sky Eagle trio followed close behind. Soon after, Xiaoyan's body completely entered the remains entrance. Everyone in the surroundings seemed to have gone crazy as they charged downwards. Some of the people who were close to Xiaoyan's group also charged in the instant that they entered the remains. Soon after, a countless number of Band D experts and even elite Do D followed close behind. They were just like a school of fish that had seen water. They impatiently and wildly charged into the remains entrance below. In the blink of an eye, the entire place was in chaos. At this moment, the dense white heavenly flame, which had been blocking the blood fog, suddenly emitted a puff, sound and completely disappeared. Soon after, a large cluster of scarlet-red blood fog surged out from under the ground. At the same time, the hundreds of Band D experts who were continuously descending from the sky uncontrollably charged into the blood fog. Chapter 630. This was a world of white fog. The milky white fog lingered in the space like clouds. With just the naked eye, one could only see a mere 10 feet in front of them. At this moment, in this world of clouds and mist, somewhere in the space, the milky white fog suddenly fluctuated. It was as if someone had suddenly thrown a huge rock into the originally calm water surface, causing it to surge violently. The clouds and mist scattered in all directions. Immediately, a figure wrapped in a black robe appeared in this space extremely abruptly. At first, the black-robed figure closed his eyes tightly, as if he was waiting for something. It was not until a few breaths later that the figure's tightly shut eyes trembled slightly, and then he carefully and slowly opened them. This place is... The eyebrows under the black robe were deeply furrowed together. Xiaoyan's gaze vigilantly looked around the world around him, and a hint of seriousness gradually surged between his brows. From the looks of it, he seemed to have entered some kind of formation. Damn it, I didn't expect to encounter a formation as soon as I entered. This ruin is really not easy to break through. With a slightly ugly expression, Xiaoyan cursed in his heart. Immediately, the eyes that had just opened slowly closed at this moment. At the same time, the vast soul power between his eyebrows also rapidly spread out at this moment, quickly spreading out in this misty white world. If it was an ordinary person when faced with this kind of situation, they would definitely move in the direction that they thought was right. However, Xiaoyan was different. If he were to rashly move in a situation where he was not clear of the situation within the formation and did not know the exit, he would only cause himself to fall into a deep maze and be unable to extricate himself. Once he landed in that kind of situation, no one would be able to save him. Therefore, for the sake of insurance, Xiaoyan still decided to use his soul power to investigate this formation. If he could use this opportunity to find a way out, it would naturally be best. Sure enough, Just a few minutes after Xiao Yan's soul power spread out, a weak aura was quickly transmitted back in the direction that Xiao Yan's soul power spread out. Almost at the same time, Xiao Yan's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A pair of pitch-black eyes quickly flashed, and even the expression on Xiao Yan's pale face recovered a little. Found it, it's here. The moment he opened his eyes, Xiao Yan let out a cry of surprise. This time, Xiao Yan did not hesitate. His body turned and faced the direction where the strange aura came from. His feet gently stepped on the empty space below his feet, and the milky white clouds churned. Xiao Yan's body also shot out at this moment like a sharp arrow piercing through the clouds. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown a few thousand feet away. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan had already flown for 15 minutes in this space where the clouds rose. In the empty space, Xiao Yan rapidly flew forward. However, unknowingly, Xiao Yan's face under the black robe could not help but frown slightly. At the same time, a feeling of doubt gradually rose in Xiao Yan's heart. In the previous investigation, Xiao Yan's soul power had only spread out for a few minutes, but he had already found the exit of this strange formation. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan had already rapidly flown in that direction for 15 minutes. However, even so, Xiao Yan did not see the so-called exit of the formation. Suddenly, Xiao Yan's body, which was originally rapidly flying forward, suddenly paused in the empty space. At the same time, the expression on the face under the black robe instantly became grave. Xiao Yan did not doubt that he had discovered the exit of the formation earlier. With his soul power, although this formation was indeed frighteningly nimble, since he had already caught the flaw, there was definitely no mistake. However, what made Xiao Yan feel surprised in his heart was that he had clearly flown in the correct direction for a long time. However, why was he still unable to see the exit? Logically speaking, he should have already passed the location of the exit long ago. No, there is something strange about this place. I must not be careless, Xiao Yan secretly said in his heart. He immediately felt that something was wrong. His body moved and he was about to explosively charge forward. Since he was currently trapped in the formation, and had no way to find the exit, he might as well decisively continue forward. Perhaps, by doing so, he would be able to seize a chance of survival. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to move, within this space, a soft voice that caused one's heart to palpitate suddenly rang out. Big brother Xiao Yan. The instant this voice was transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears, Xiao Yan's body, which had just moved, immediately stilled on the spot. His pair of dark black eyes widened until they were the size of a copper bell in an instant. Even his entire body involuntarily emitted an intense tremble at this moment. On his face, there was a deep expression of disbelief. Just at this moment, that familiar cry rang out once again. Compared to before, this time, it seemed as if it was right beside his ear. Big brother Xiao Yan. The instant this cry fell, Xiao Yan, who was standing in the air, suddenly turned his head. His eyes, which were already bloodshot, immediately turned. Immediately after, in the next moment, as expected, a familiar and beautiful figure was standing in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing this beautiful figure, Xiao Yan's entire person was initially startled. Soon after, his entire body involuntarily trembled once again. Immediately, the emotions within his heart were like the yellow river bursting its banks. He suddenly hugged the pretty person in front of him tightly in his embrace. The longing in his heart could no longer be suppressed at this moment. Sun air. Because of the longing, Xiao Yan's voice actually sounded a little hoarse. The young girl, who was tightly hugged in his arms, also revealed a warm and moving sweet smile on her face. Then she gently pushed Xiao Yan away. A pair of bright and beautiful eyes looked at Xiao Yan in front of her for a long time. It was only after a long while that Sun Air slowly said, "Big brother Xiao Yan, let's go. Let's go home." Hearing this, Xiao Yan was startled at first. Then he asked softly, "Go home? Go back to where?" As if she had heard something funny, the smile on Sun Air's sweet face suddenly became even more beautiful. Her white jade-like hands gently caressed Xiao Yan's cheeks and said softly, "Big brother Xiao Yan, what's wrong with you? Of course we're going back to the Xiao family in Wutan City." Hearing this, Xiao Yan's expression changed, as if he had thought of something. But immediately he could not help but ask again. Then, What about teacher? All these years has he been well? When Xiao Yan's words sounded, the pretty face of the young lady in front of him was startled. It was as though she had never heard of this so-called teacher. Her pair of beautiful eyes involuntarily revealed a lost and doubtful expression. Seeing this, the scarlet color in Xiao Yan's eyes quickly retreated. His face, which had become pleasantly surprised because of the appearance of the young girl in front of him, also gradually became indifferent. In the end, Xiao Yan still shook his head with a disappointed face. He took a deep breath and let go of Sun Er in front of him. He could not help but whisper in a low voice, "Thank you for allowing me to see Sun Er again. However, a fake. In the end, it's a fake. It can't become real. Goodbye." Big brother Xiao Yan, what are you saying? Why didn't Sun Er understand a single word? After pushing Sun Er away, Xiao Yan was about to leave. However, Sun Er, who was beside him, hurriedly hugged Xiao Yan's arm as if she did not know. Her beautiful face was filled with a pitiful expression at this moment. However, Xiao Yan was indifferent. Just as he was about to push the person in his arms away, suddenly, in the void beside him, a figure flashed quickly and took the lead to pull away Sun Er, who was hugging Xiao Yan at this moment. Immediately after, before Xiao Yan regained his senses, he grabbed Xiao Yan's arm and was about to pull him in a certain direction. At the same time, the familiar voice that was filled with warmth also entered Xiao Yan's ears. "Husband, let's leave quickly. These fellows are all fake. Sun Er and I accidentally entered this place a month ago. It is very likely that she is facing the same danger now. We must quickly find her." A voice that was filled with anxiety entered Xiao Yan's ears. Immediately, the expression on Xiao Yan's face was stunned. From the sound of it, it was actually Kai Lin's voice. Chapter 631. Xiao Yan's body was as steady as Mount Tai as he stood in the air in this world that was shrouded by clouds and mist. He remained unmoved no matter how hard the great beauty in front of him pulled. "Husband, let's go quickly. We don't know where Sun Er is now. We must find her as soon as possible." Kai Lin's beautiful face revealed an anxious expression. Her lotus root-like snow-white arm was exposed to the air. Her tender hand tightly grabbed Xiao Yan's wrist as she tried her best to bring Xiao Yan away from this place. At this moment, the expression in Xiao Yan's dark black eyes appeared indifferent. However, his gaze still involuntarily swept over the familiar lovely body in front of him. Only then did he slowly inhale a deep breath of air. He gently shook his head and slowly said in a calm yet firm tone, "You are right. You are right. Let go. You are not Kai Lin." The great beauty in front of him immediately paused when these words were uttered. Only after a couple of breaths did she slowly release her hand that was tightly grabbing Xiao Yan's wrist. Soon after, the surrounding fog swiftly gathered around this Kai Lin. In the blink of an eye, the figure in front of Xiao Yan had transformed into a blurry human figure, whose face could not be seen clearly. At the same time, a somewhat indifferent and unfamiliar female voice was spat out from her mouth. "How did you discover it?" Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled when these words were uttered. The expression on his face involuntarily changed. A surprise involuntarily surged into his pair of dark black eyes. His gaze stared intently at the cluster of fog in front of him that appeared like a human. The shock in his heart was difficult to imagine. This formation, has actually gained sentience." It was a long while later before Xiao Yan finally revealed a surprised expression as he spoke in a deep voice. His tone was grave. It was likely that no one would be able to maintain a calm state of mind in the face of such a shocking matter. He had heard of a Do technique transforming into a spirit, but he had never heard of a formation that could do so. If that was really the case, would he not be in danger if this person in front of him wanted to attack him? The cluster of cream-white fog surged slightly after Xiao Yan's words were uttered. It immediately became quiet. However, soon after, a soft laughter with unknown meaning was emitted from the fog. At the same time, the unfamiliar and indifferent female voice was quickly emitted. "Perhaps." Hiss! Xiao Yan under the black robe involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when he heard this ambiguous answer. His originally frowning eyebrows were tightly knit together at this moment. The seriousness in his heart did not reduce because of this. After all, regardless of whether the other party was the spirit of this formation or not, it was likely that it would not be difficult for her to deal with him. Xiaoyan could only helplessly withdraw his thoughts after thinking for a while in vain. His breathing was a little heavy as he inhaled a deep breath of air. His eyelids were lowered and a glint flowed deep within his dark black eyes. Only then did he look at the cluster of fog in front of him. He paused for a moment before the corner of his mouth was lifted into a smile. The reason I am able to recognize that you are a fake is because Kai Lin does not address me as husband. She always calls me by my name. The cream-white human figure in front of him involuntarily fluctuated after Xiaoyan's words were uttered. Immediately, a soft laugh was emitted from the human figure. It seemed to be mocking itself, but it also seemed to represent that this was the case. Xiaoyan involuntarily frowned when he saw this. A thought passed through his heart, and the dou qi within the vortex within his body began to quietly circulate at this moment. He was prepared to deal with this strange formation in front of him at any moment. There is no need to be nervous. You can leave this place. The faint voice of a woman was emitted from the fog in front of him, after seemingly sensing the dou qi fluctuation within Xiaoyan's body. Xiaoyan's eyes involuntarily hardened. Soon after this woman's voice sounded, the fog that filled the space in front of Xiaoyan swiftly scattered to the sides as though it had received an order. It opened up a 2-meter-wide path in front of Xiaoyan. A surprised expression involuntarily flashed across Xiaoyan's eyes when he saw this. He frowned slightly and his spiritual strength spread out. It swiftly spread toward the end of the path in front of him. After the fog scattered, the speed at which Xiaoyan's spiritual strength spread out seemed to have unknowingly increased. As expected, within a couple of breaths, the spiritual strength that Xiaoyan had spread out swiftly found the exit of the formation that he had sensed earlier. Xiaoyan's expression was immediately startled when he found the exit of the formation. It was unexpected that the formation in front of him would actually take the initiative to allow him to leave the formation. This was really strange. You are really letting me leave. I don't believe that you, as the spirit of the formation, are able to do such a disobedient thing. Xiaoyan's voice hesitated for an instant before he finally could not resist asking. The cluster of fog in front of him involuntarily became silent when it heard this. Soon after, a lovely laughter was swiftly emitted from within. Why? Are you afraid that I will scheme to harm you? Since I am the spirit of the formation, I can directly attack you if I want to deal with you. Why should I waste so much effort? Wouldn't that be asking for a rebuff? Of course, if you are unwilling to leave, I can also let you stay forever. Towards the end, the tone actually caused one to involuntarily feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately, even Xiaoyan's heart involuntarily turned cold. However, after pondering for a moment in his heart, he still carefully lifted his feet and slowly walked towards the end of the tunnel in front of him. Only after he walked 100 steps did Xiaoyan turn his head to look behind him. The scattered fog gradually spread, causing the current Xiaoyan to have no way of retreat. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiaoyan's face changed once again. However, in the end he still helplessly moved his body. As his spiritual strength spread out, he swiftly flew towards the direction of the exit. When Xiaoyan's figure gradually disappeared into the fog, a milky white fog gradually condensed at a certain spot in the formation. However, unlike before, this time around, a beautiful lady wearing a long dress appeared. The lady was wearing a long golden dress. Various kinds of formation pictures were drawn on it. The most mysterious thing was that those formation pictures were actually faintly flickering with a bright light. Ah, the spirit of the formation. What an interesting person. At the same time, Xiaoyan, who was on the other side, flew at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he had already seen a dazzling white light at the end of the tunnel in front of him. It can't be wrong. This is indeed the exit. Xiaoyan cried out in surprise in his heart. Immediately after, he instantly executed the sky extinction steps. In the next instant, Xiaoyan had already appeared in front of the white light. As a smile appeared on his face, his body straightened forward and instantly disappeared into the white light in front of him. https. Genius remembers this site's address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 632. Golden light lingered over the enormous hall. Numerous bright golden beads were embedded into the ring-shaped walls. They emitted a gentle golden light that illuminated the entire hall. Numerous golden lines were connected together on the ground of this large hall, forming an enormous formation. It flickered from time to time and emitted a mysterious glow, causing this originally bright and beautiful hall to become incomparably bright. The entire space was filled with a gentle golden light, causing this large hall to appear extremely majestic. At a glance, one would think that this was a magnificent palace. At this moment, a couple of mysterious passageways that looked like wormholes stood within this large hall. They emitted an even gentler milky white light. However, the aura that was emitted from these passageways caused one to not dare to underestimate this seemingly gentle white light. At this moment, in this tunnel that was surrounded by white light, as the white light above the tunnel buzzed and flickered, figures were spat out from time to time. At a certain moment, a figure wrapped in a black robe finally rushed out from the tunnel. Hum hum hum. A low buzzing sound appeared. The light on one of the passageways suddenly brightened. The milky white flowing light that lingered around the passageways also fluctuated intensely. Soon after, a black flowing light suddenly shot out from within like lightning. This person was Xiao Yan, who had escaped from the formation. Xiao Yan's swiftly moving body suddenly paused in the empty space after he appeared, and saw the gentle golden light in the sky. At the same time, Xiao Yan's eyes swept across the large hall below. Only then did he discover that there were actually quite a number of people in this large hall. At this moment, Xiao Yan's sudden appearance, coupled with his frightening speed, immediately attracted the attention of everyone in this large hall. Xiao Yan ignored the many surprised gazes. His eyes swiftly scanned the entire large hall. However, he did not discover any traces of the Tianing trio. Immediately, he involuntarily frowned. Soon after, he sighed helplessly in his heart. Currently, he could only hope that they had already left this place. Xiao Yan's eyes swept once again. He immediately saw 5 exits within this large hall. The exits were located in different directions. At this moment, the human figures that had exited from the passageways were all flying towards those exits. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yan once again spread his spiritual strength and swiftly spread it towards the 5 exits. However, a moment later, Xiao Yan could only helplessly frown in his heart. This time around, he was not as lucky as when he was in the formation. Even though his spiritual strength had surged into those exits, Xiao Yan was unable to find anything regardless of how he extended it. Damn it! Looks like I can only make a choice on the spot. Xiao Yan cursed in his heart. Only then did he lift his eyes and sweep them around the 5 exits. Finally, he chose the closest exit to him. His body moved and he disappeared from the spot in the blink of an eye under the shocked gazes of everyone present. After entering the exit, this place was just like what Xiao Yan had probed earlier. Both sides were completely bare walls. There was basically nothing. Although Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little vexed in his heart, he was also able to understand why this place was purposely designed in such a manner. It was likely that this place was designed to prevent people with powerful spiritual strengths from probing it. After enduring this boring journey for 2 hours, Xiao Yan finally came to a gradual halt in front of a shattered stone door. The stone door was shattered. Behind it was a huge stone room. At this moment, other than a few worthless medicinal ingredients left behind, the rest of the stone room was completely empty. It was not difficult to imagine that this stone room had been plundered. Of course, other than these traces left behind, there were still some bloodstains left on the floor of the stone room. It looked like the strong practitioner who had opened the stone door had paid quite a hefty price in order to obtain the items inside. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's heart moved slightly. Since he had found the first stone room, it meant that he could still find the other stone rooms. In that case, he would finally be able to obtain some rewards from this trip to the desolate ancient remains. As he thought of this, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth slowly curled into a smile under his black robe. He looked at the intersection at the end of the tunnel not far in front of him. Without any hesitation, his body moved and he swiftly flew over. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan had already seen more than 10 shattered stone doors like the one from before. Most of the items within these stone doors were completely gone. However, from the remnant pill fragrance or medicinal fragrance, the items within were definitely not ordinary. At the same time, with the help of his spiritual strength, Xiaoyan was also able to clearly sense that there were some powerful auras left behind on these shattered stone doors. It looked like there was an even more powerful seal formation on each stone door. In order to obtain the items behind the stone door, one must first break the formation. Finally, after Xiaoyan had passed through more than 10 shattered stone doors, a complete stone door finally appeared in front of him. Xiaoyan's body also stopped because of this. This stone door looked exactly the same as the other places. There was some kind of formation pattern carved on the surface of the stone door. A faint energy fluctuation spread out from it, causing the entire stone door to be protected within. Seeing this, Xiaoyan smiled. No matter what, he had finally found a stone room. Naturally, he could not bear to miss it. With a thought, his soul strength immediately swept out. After slowly approaching the stone door, it was about to gently approach the array pattern on it. Soon after, however, one could see a bright glow being emitted from the formation. After a buzzing sound, a powerful aura was suddenly emitted from the formation. Soon after, the spiritual strength that Xiaoyan had spread out was shattered in one strike the instant Xiaoyan recovered. Ah! Xiaoyan could not help but cry out in surprise. He never expected the formation to be so tyrannical. Just by approaching it with energy, it actually took the initiative to launch a counterattack. Moreover, from the looks of it, it was not something that ordinary half-emperor experts could compare to. It was no wonder that this stone door was the only one that remained undamaged among so many other stone doors. However, immediately after, Xiaoyan chuckled. The formation on the stone door had indeed exceeded his expectations. However, he had only been carelessly probing it earlier. That was why he had suffered a setback. However, it was not certain what would happen next. The corners of Xiaoyan's mouth gradually curled into a sneer under his black robe. Soon after, the hand under his sleeve suddenly clenched into a fist. Immediately after, his body suddenly twisted, and a heavy punch fiercely smashed against the stone door before him. Boom! Immediately, following a violent explosion, Xiaoyan could not help but take a few steps back. When he looked at the stone door again, although the formation was still there was already an obvious crack on the stone door. I've really underestimated this formation. However, it'll still be broken. Xiaoyan's mouth was slightly surprised as he emitted a soft laugh. Soon after, his gaze suddenly became violent. A stern cry was emitted from his heart. Soon after, his body abruptly moved and arrived in front of the rock door in the blink of an eye. He lifted his body and a heavy whipping kick violently landed on the rock door in front of him. Octane blast. Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying force poured out like a collapsing mountain. 8 layers of hidden force exploded. Following a violent muffled sound, Xiaoyan's body did not move at all. On the other hand, the light of the formation on the stone door in front of him quickly dimmed. At the same time, cracks rapidly spread across the entire stone door like a spider web. Immediately after, the huge stone door collapsed in front of Xiaoyan with a loud bang. After doing this, Xiaoyan slowly withdrew his right leg. At the same time, his gaze followed the collapse of the stone door, and looked at the space behind the stone door. The moment Xiaoyan's gaze shot into the space, he only saw a dazzling white light. Immediately, Xiaoyan could not help but squint his eyes. After a few breaths, he slowly looked at the white light in the space. After seeing the white light clearly, Xiaoyan's eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise and fanaticism. These white lights were actually pieces of spirit stones. Chapter 633. Spirit stones were the most basic source of spirit coins. They were the currency of the Yuanwu continent. At the same time, spirit stones were also one of the many training resources. Moreover, compared to an ordinary training resource, spirit stones not only provided more doqi energy, but they were also much purer. A portion of high-tier spirit stones had even reached the stage where a practitioner could directly swallow and refine them. The so-called high-tier spirit stones were a classification of spirit stones. This was similar to the classification of qi methods and do techniques. Spirit stones were also divided into 4 grades. They were low-tier spirit stones, middle-tier spirit stones, high-tier spirit stones, and top-tier spirit stones. These 4 types of spirit stones were of different grades, and the gap between them was like the distance between heaven and earth. The lowest grade low-tier spirit stone was the spirit coin that Xiaoyan currently possessed. as the low-tier spirit stones contained extremely little natural energy, and the energy was mixed, it was basically useless to a true expert. Hence, low-tier spirit stones were decisively turned into the currency of the continent's experts. As for medial-grade spiritual stones, most of these spiritual stones were in the hands of some powerful sects and forces. The energy contained within these spiritual stones would increase the number of powerhouses in those forces. Therefore, comparatively speaking, medial-grade spiritual stones had become a superior cultivation resource that various forces would fight over. Of course, other than this, a middle-grade spirit stone was also an essential material in the hands of all array masters. Many high-grade arrays required a huge amount of energy as the foundation. If one only relied on manpower, it would be very difficult to maintain the array for a long period of time. At this moment, a middle-grade spirit stone could replace manpower and replenish this portion of energy. As for the higher-grade high-tier spirit stones, they were extremely rare. Once they appeared, it would cause an uproar in the continent. Every time someone on the continent discovered a mine that might contain high-tier spirit stones, it would instantly cause a huge bloodbath. Countless factions and countless experts would pay the price with their lives in order to obtain a few high-tier spirit stones. From this, one could tell just how precious high-tier spirit stones were. As for the top-tier spirit stones that seemed to only exist in legends, according to the records of the continent, it had likely not appeared for hundreds of years. That kind of thing was not only rare, but the information that people had about it was so little that it could be ignored. Other than the fact that top-tier spirit stones contained an extremely large amount of energy, no one knew anything else. In front of the rock door, the expression on Xiao Yan's face had completely solidified the moment he saw those spirit stones. Soon after, a wild joy that could not be suppressed immediately surfaced in Xiao Yan's eyes after a couple of breaths. The expression on his face was so excited that it was flushed red. His widened mouth was also unable to speak because of the excitement in his heart. At a glance, all that entered one's eyes was a large pile of spirit stones. Regardless of the tier, as long as one could take out such a large number of spirit stones, it would definitely attract the attention of a countless number of people. However, at this moment, so many spirit stones were placed in piles in front of Xiao Yan. How could this not cause one's heart to feel excited? It was a long while later that Xiao Yan gradually woke up from the excitement in his heart. His gaze hurriedly glanced at the tunnel on both sides. Only when he realized that no one had arrived did he hurriedly move and store all the spirit stones in the stone room into his storage ring. In the blink of an eye, the stone room, which was still surrounded by white light a moment ago, was now empty. There was a slightly bleak atmosphere. In this regard, Xiao Yan did not care. The surprise in his heart made Xiao Yan's heart even more excited at this moment. With so many spirit stones, although he did not have the time to carefully inspect them, Xiao Yan was certain that with these spirit stones, the problem of the strength of his 9 incarnations would be solved. He believed that as long as his 9 incarnations were able to refine these spirit stones, even if they were unable to all become 6-star half-martial emperors, Xiao Yan was certain that the majority of them would be able to become 5-star half-martial emperors. To be able to accomplish this, Xiao Yan was already perfectly satisfied. Of course, if these spirit stones were used to increase Xiao Yan's strength, it would not be a problem. However, Xiao Yan had just increased his strength. To be able to refine spirit stones again in such a short period of time was not a good thing for Xiao Yan. While being able to increase one's strength was good, everything had to be done step by step. As the saying goes, going too far is as bad as not going far enough. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. If one were to excessively pursue one's own strength and forcibly refine those spirit stones, even if Xiao Yan's strength increased on the surface, a gap would appear in his foundation. This was not something that Xiao Yan wished to see. However, incarnations were different. The strength of an incarnation was determined by the strength of the main body. As long as the main body was strong enough, and with sufficient natural energies, the incarnation's strength would be able to increase to the same level as the main body in a short period of time. Of course, the prerequisite for this was that there must be sufficient natural energies to support it. Evidently, this was something that the current Xiao Yan did not possess. The only thing that he could hope for was for his incarnation's strength to reach that of 5-star half-martial emperors after consuming all of the spirit stones in his spatial ring. This would be sufficient to prove that this journey was not in vain. After withdrawing his thoughts, Xiaoyan turned his gaze to the end of the passageway. There was another intersection there. Xiaoyan also believed that, other than these spirit stones, this remnant would definitely give him an even greater surprise. With a faint smile, Xiaoyan raised his hand and pulled down the black robe on his head, covering his entire body. After that, Xiaoyan lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. Soon after, his body moved, and he immediately turned into a ray of black light. Like lightning, in the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from the end of the passageway. In the following period of time, Xiaoyan rapidly traveled through the passageway. The long and winding passageway seemed to have no end. During this process, Xiaoyan also saw many stone doors that had already been destroyed. Of course, at the same time, he also saw some half-martial emperors who were doing their best to attack the stone doors. When those people saw Xiaoyan again, a trace of fear appeared in their eyes. Xiaoyan's speed had greatly shocked these people. However, even more so, they were filled with hostility. They did not wish for the result of their painstaking effort to destroy the stone doors to become someone else's. Thus, no matter how they attacked, they would ultimately leave some leeway. In response to this, Xiaoyan smiled slightly. Like lightning, his body flew extremely quickly. Every time he found a stone door that was not attacked by anyone, he would use the most ferocious and overbearing method to destroy it. This attracted extremely shocked gazes from the crowd. In the blink of an eye, Xiaoyan had already stored the items within the stone room into his storage ring. Xiaoyan directly chose to ignore those shocked gazes. After a few consecutive attacks, the medicinal ingredients and pills within the stone doors, regardless of their grade, were all stuffed into Xiaoyan's storage ring. Soon after, his figure came and went like the wind, quickly disappearing from the sight of the statue-like crowd behind him. Chapter 634. Human figures flashed within the tunnel that was dozens of feet wide. There would be a stone door every 100 feet or so. A large portion of them had already been forcefully opened under the bombardment of many experts. The formations on the stone doors had been broken, and the various treasures within had been completely looted. Bang! An intense bang sound appeared and the thick stone door was broken. The stone door collapsed and Xiaoyan stood in front of the stone door in an imposing manner. He eyed the various medicinal ingredients that were scattered all over the stone room in front of him. Both of Xiaoyan's eyes swiftly took a look around it. Finally, he withdrew his gaze with some disappointment. At this point, Xiaoyan did not know how long he had been in the ruins. However, according to Xiaoyan's rough guess, it had been 4 to 5 days. In these few days, Xiaoyan had broken through nearly 100 stone doors. However, other than the large amount of spirit stones he had obtained the first time, he did not gain anything else. Currently, the thing that Xiaoyan looked forward to the most was naturally the soul-gathering fruit, and the last 2 medicinal ingredients needed to refine the ice spirit pill. However, after searching for a couple of days, he was unable to find any of these 3 ingredients. Casually putting away the medicinal herbs in the stone room, Xiaoyan's figure flashed and disappeared again. A moment after Xiaoyan left, a couple of human figures quietly appeared in front of the shattered stone door, where Xiaoyan had been standing earlier in a ghost-like manner. Numerous pairs of sharp gazes randomly swept over this stone room in front of them, which had already become empty. Immediately, the leader of the few of them waved his large hand. Soon after, these few people swiftly chased in the direction that Xiaoyan had disappeared in. In merely an instant, they had already disappeared from the end of this tunnel. A moment later, Xiaoyan's body once again paused in front of a stone door. Compared to earlier, the stone door in front of Xiaoyan was different. The formation that was carved on it appeared even more complicated. The aura that was emitted from it caused one's heart to involuntarily become solemn. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's face revealed an expression of anticipation. He hoped that after opening this stone door he would be able to find the things he needed. With an expression of surprise on his face, Xiaoyan stood in front of the stone door. His feet slowly moved back half a step. His white hand extended out of his sleeves and suddenly clenched. The dou qi in his body also suddenly gathered in his palm. Immediately, Xiaoyan twisted his body and a fist violently smashed towards the stone door in front of him. 8-level collapse. With a stern cry in his heart, Xiaoyan's fist, which was enough to cause a 7-star half-emperor to instantly lose the ability to fight, violently smashed against the stone door in front of him. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion instantly spread. The mysterious formation on the stone door also emitted a dazzling golden light at this moment. A powerful force suddenly swept out from between Xiaoyan's fist and the stone door. The powerful force directly shook Xiaoyan's body and forced him to take a step back. Hiss! This formation is indeed not something that those formations before could compare with. However, with its rebounding power, it is already several times stronger than those formations. With such a powerful defense, it is likely that even an 8-star half-martial emperor would find it very difficult to break through it. However, haha. Until the end of his words, Xiaoyan, who was under the black robe, actually revealed a smile on his face. Immediately, the gaze under the black robe was swiftly lifted. Both of his hands rotated and Do Qi gathered in his palms. After which, 2 more palms violently landed on the stone door in front of him. Yellow Spring Palm. Ancient God Seal. 2 Tian-class Do skills were released in succession. Immediately, circular energy ripples began to rapidly spread on the stone door in front of him. At this moment, the formation also flickered with a golden light and completely blocked Xiaoyan's 2 palms. After the 2 Tian-class Do skills were blocked, the powerful force was immediately reflected back. Xiaoyan's body was involuntarily forced back once again. However, before the energy ripples on the formation in front of him could scatter, Xiaoyan's body turned and his right shoulder violently smashed against the formation. Bang bang bang. After 5 consecutive attacks, the energy on the formation in front of Xiaoyan had already become increasingly weak. Circular energy ripples began to spread out one after another, just like intensely churning water. This continued until the 7th time. The instant Xiaoyan's heavy whip legs smashed against the formation in front of him, one could hear a bang sound. The glow on the formation swiftly dimmed. At the same time, the formation diagram on the stone door behind also began to swiftly form numerous spiderweb-like crack lines. Immediately, the entire stone door collapsed in front of Xiaoyan, lifting a dense cloud of dust. Who? After doing all this, Xiaoyan involuntarily exhaled a long breath. He immediately waved his sleeve and an invisible wind immediately swept out, completely sweeping away the cloud of dust that was blocking his sight. Immediately, Xiaoyan focused his eyes and looked over. His eyes immediately brightened. Indeed, the strength of the formation also represented the extraordinariness of the things within it. At this moment, in the stone room in front of Xiaoyan, there were 5 storage shelves neatly arranged. This was something that the stone rooms that were randomly arranged earlier could not compare with. On these shelves, there were also many jade boxes neatly arranged. Moreover, from the size of these jade boxes, it was not difficult to tell that these jade boxes definitely contained medicinal pills without a doubt. Although they were medicinal pills, the thing that caused Xiaoyan to feel joy in his heart was that those jade boxes that contained medicinal pills that Xiaoyan had discovered earlier had already reached the level of a Tier 2 medicinal pill. Hence, it was not difficult to imagine that among all the jade boxes that were placed within this stone room, the lowest quality medicinal pill was likely a Tier 3 medicinal pill. Moreover, from the looks of the number of jade boxes, there were at least 100 of them. In other words, there were at least 100 Tier 3 medicinal pills in this place. Nearly 100 Tier 3 medicinal pills. This was likely something that even the Alchemist Alliance's foundation could not compare to. TSK this time I have really struck it rich. Xiaoyan could not help but click his tongue. At the same time, a cold glint flashed across the pair of pitch-black eyes under the black robe. After saying this, Xiaoyan lifted his foot and slowly walked towards the depths of the stone room. At the same time, in the passageway outside the stone room, a few human figures quietly arrived and swiftly approached the stone room. Within the stone room, Xiaoyan arrived in front of the 5 shelves. With a thought, all the jade boxes on the shelves were all stored into Xiaoyan's storage ring in the blink of an eye. At this moment, 5 human figures suddenly appeared in front of the door of the stone room. Haha. Thank you, sir, for helping us collect so many treasures. In return, We will take your life as quickly as possible. HTTPS. Genius remembers home address in 1 second. Mobile reading website. Chapter 635. A sinister and sinister laughter slowly reverberated within the stone room. 5 figures were standing in a disorderly manner before the stone door. The person leading them was a gray-robed old man with a sharp mouth, monkey-like cheeks, and sinister eyes. The laughter from before had come from his mouth. In the past few days, the 5 of them had done quite a lot of things like killing and robbing. Whenever they encountered someone with a bit of strength and the ability to open the stone door, they would quietly wait by the side for the moment the stone door was opened. Then, the 5 of them would attack at the same time and kill the person who opened the stone door. In this way, not only would they be able to obtain the treasures from the stone door, they would also be able to obtain even more things. In the short span of a few days, they had already consecutively killed over a dozen half-martial emperors. At this moment, Xiaoyan was their 15th target. When this gray-robed old man's treacherous words sounded, the 4 human figures behind him also emitted a cold laugh from their mouths. The 5 of them took a step forward at the same time. Immediately, a frightening aura and pressure swept toward Xiaoyan, who was currently within the stone room, without uttering a single word. Only when he sensed the incoming aura did Xiaoyan slightly turn his head around. As if he had just noticed them, the pair of pitch-black eyes under the black robe stared at the 5 people in front of the stone room. A light flashed through his eyes, and soon after he softly muttered, 2 9-star half-martial emperors, 3 8-star half-martial emperors. I must say, if this lineup was placed elsewhere, there would truly be no one who would be a match for you all. However, before me. Towards the end, Xiaoyan's voice gradually became softer. In the end, he became completely silent. At the same time, the combined aura of the 5 half-martial emperors had already arrived before Xiaoyan in the blink of an eye. Humph. An indifferent cold snort was heard. Immediately, an incomparably tyrannical aura appeared within Xiaoyan's body. At this moment, it turned into a storm and violently swept out from Xiaoyan's body. Soon after, the 2 equally powerful auras violently collided. Bang! Following a low and deep bang, the 2 powerful auras collided in the space in front of Xiaoyan. Immediately, the invisible space abruptly surged. Soon after, the combined aura of the 5 half-martial emperors was actually shattered in front of the shocked gazes of the 5 half-martial emperors. The expressions of the 5 half-step emperors changed abruptly when their auras were destroyed, and their eyes revealed expressions of disbelief. The combined auras of the 5 of them had actually been destroyed by a single strike from the black-robed man before them. Exactly how strong is this fellow? Don't tell me he's a Dodi? Damn it. Why would such an expert appear here? Shouldn't they have gone straight into the depths of the ruins? What should we do now? We have offended an elite Dodi. Even with our strength, we are definitely no match for him. But if we don't attack, do you think he will let us off? The 4 half-martial emperors behind the gray-robed old man had extremely ugly expressions as they softly muttered to each other. Faced with an opponent whose strength was very likely to be a Dodi, their hearts were unable to raise any thoughts of fighting him. In the eyes of a Dodi, these so-called high-class half-martial emperors were not even worth mentioning. When these words were transmitted into the ears of the gray-robed old man's expression immediately became gloomy. These few fellows were at the very least high-class half-martial emperors. Usually, they would act high and mighty in front of others. Why was it that they had actually become so timid and fearful in the face of a fellow whose strength they could not be certain of? What useless trash! The old man softly cursed in his heart. He raised his eyes and looked at Xiaoyan within the stone room. The muscles on the corner of his eyes involuntarily twitched. Immediately he suddenly turned his head. His eyes were sharp as he stared at the 4 people behind him. His voice was soft and deep as he reprimanded. Why are you panicking? If he is really an elite Dodi, why would he need to waste any effort to break this formation? His true strength is not something that can be explained by his aura alone. The 4 people behind the gray-robed old man finally reacted after these words were uttered. If this black-robed person in front of them was really an elite Dodi, would it not be extremely easy for him to break the formation on the stone door? Moreover, given the pride of an elite Dodi, It was likely that he would have already attacked if there was really someone who dared to say those words to him. Yet, from the looks of the current situation, this black-robed person did not seem to have any intention of attacking. After thinking this through, the expressions of the 4 half-martial emperors immediately became dark and cold in the blink of an eye. Humph, deliberately acting mysterious. You are seeking death. Hey, we have nearly fallen for your trick. Everyone attack together. Let us see just how strong you are. The 4 of them each emitted a cold laugh from their mouths. Immediately, their bodies, which were standing on the spot, suddenly moved. They instantly transformed into 4 rays of light that carried a fierce aura. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. With a wave of their large hands, the weapons in each of their hands flashed in an orderly manner. They carried a sharp, cold glint as they violently attacked Xiao Yan's head. The gray-robed old man also followed closely behind these 4 people. Dou Qi swiftly agglomerated in his hand, appearing as though he wanted to kill Xiao Yan in one strike. Xiao Yan's expression did not change in the face of this. However, the cold glint that overflowed from those dark black eyes under the black robe became increasingly obvious. The Dou Qi within his body had already circulated throughout his entire body. As long as Xiao Yan thought about it, he would be able to unleash a fierce attack at any time. In the next moment, the sharp blades in the hands of the 4 figures in front of him emitted a cold glint. They had already arrived above Xiao Yan's head. Powerful Dou Qi ripples caused the empty space around these few people to repeatedly tremble intensely. At the same time that the sharp blades in their hands cut through the empty space, they also emitted an ear-piercing explosive sound. Threads of spatial crack lines continued to appear around these 4 people. The ferocious expression in the eyes of these 4 people became even denser when they saw Xiao Yan, who appeared to have been overly frightened, in close proximity. Even the weapons in their hands had become increasingly sharp. However, in the next moment, the pupils of these 4 people, who saw that the black-robed person had already become a dead soul under their hands, suddenly shrunk. The breathing from their nostrils suddenly became sluggish at this moment. Even their charging bodies appeared to have lost all control. The instant they were about to make contact with Xiao Yan's body, they were blocked by an invisible force. Immediately, their bodies became soft. The instant they were about to land on the ground, they quietly disappeared, turning into a pile of ashes behind them. The expression in the eyes of the gray-robed old man suddenly became one of shock and horror, when he saw the extremely strange manner in which the 4 people in front of him had died. No matter what, he did not expect that this strange black-robed person in front of him was actually this strong. Could it be that he was really an elite Dodi? Soon after, however, a sinister expression surged into the old man's eyes. Regardless of whether the person in front of him was an elite Dodi or not, he had just attacked those 4 people, and was currently in an empty spot. This was the best opportunity to attack. A sinister sharp roar was emitted from his mouth. Soon after, the body of the gray-robed old man had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Immediately, a firm palm violently smashed onto Xiao Yan's chest. Puff! However, after the palm of the gray-robed old man landed, what was exchanged was a low and deep muffled sound. In an instant, the expression of the old man suddenly changed drastically. Before he could react, Xiao Yan's body suddenly shook. A huge force immediately poured out, and sent the gray-robed old man flying with one strike. After the old man stabilized his body with a frightened expression, he raised his gaze. Before he could say anything, the expression on his face changed once again. The spot where the black-robed person was standing earlier had already become empty. Soon after, the eyes of the old man suddenly shrunk. A chill was immediately transmitted from the back of his neck. I gave you a gathering to leave on your own accord. Since you insist on seeking death, you can't blame me. The instant the indifferent voice sounded, a fire glow immediately flashed in Xiao Yan's palm. Immediately, a fire arrow instantly penetrated the neck of the gray-robed old man. https. Genius remembers this address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 636. The fragments of the stone door that had been shattered by the enormous force had collapsed and piled up in front of the door of the stone room. Many natural treasures were placed in an orderly manner within the stone room. From the looks of the energy ripple that was emitted from the air, the things in this place were also extraordinary. At this moment, there were 7 half-martial emperors standing in the stone chamber. However, these 7 half-martial emperors all had some injuries on their bodies. One of them had even fainted. The remaining 6 people were currently staring at the mysterious black-robed person with shocked faces. Their hearts were filled with disbelief. There were a total of 7 of them, and 3 of them were 9-star bandits. Even the strength of the remaining 4 were 8-star bandits. This kind of lineup was sufficient to allow them to defeat anyone below the elite Do-D class on this trip to the remains. Yet, it was unexpected that the 7 of them would be defeated by a single person despite joining hands. Moreover, they had been defeated in such a miserable manner. Even though they had attacked with all their strength, they were unable to last more than 3 exchanges in the hands of this black-robed person in front of them. Just who was this person in front of them? At this moment, the hearts of these 6 people had completely understood. By being able to rely on his own strength to easily defeat 7 bandit experts, it was likely that the person in front of them was at least an elite Do-D. Gulp. As they thought of this, a few streams of cold sweat uncontrollably flowed down their foreheads. A sense of fear swiftly rose from the bottom of their hearts. Their figures, which were barely standing, could not help but tremble slightly at this moment. Even their hands, which were holding their weapons, could not help but feel a wave of numbness. It was as if the weapons in their hands were about to slip out. The atmosphere of the square became increasingly tense following the silence of the black-robed person. Cold sweat that caused one's heart to feel a chill surged out from all over the bodies of these 6 people. It swiftly drenched the clothes on the surface of their bodies. A moment later, the black-robed person finally let out a faint cold snort. His voice was indifferent as he spoke. Those who do not wish to die should get lost now. The voice was cold, as if it came from the underworld. However, when it reached the ears of the 6 people in front of him, their expressions immediately changed. It was as if they were prisoners who had been sentenced to death, but were suddenly pardoned. The ecstasy in their hearts was indescribable. In the blink of an eye, the 6 of them hurriedly turned around and dashed out of the stone room without a care for anything else. Just as they turned around, the black-robed man in front of them suddenly spoke again. Wait. In an instant, the breathing of the 6 half-martial emperors turned sluggish at the same time. Their eyes instantly shrunk as a chill rose from the bottom of their hearts. Senior, is there anything else? Take this guy away too. The black-robed man pointed at the ground in front of him and said coldly. Hearing this, the 6 of them hurriedly recovered. Only then did they hurriedly help up the other person who had fainted on the ground. After which, they respectfully bowed to the black-robed man. Only then did they hurriedly turn around and swiftly fly out of the stone room. Only when the few of them disappeared from the stone room did the black-robed man raise his pitch-black eyes. He casually swept his gaze over the empty stone room in front of him. Soon after, he waved his large hand and kept all the medicinal ingredients and various rare metal materials on the storage shelf to the side into his storage ring. His body moved and he instantly disappeared from the stone room. Ever since the last time he met the 5 people who had joined hands in the stone room, this was already the 4th group of people that Xiaoyan had met in succession within 5 days. However, unlike the first time, Xiaoyan did not kill these people the next few times. For Xiaoyan, there were an unknown number of people who had joined hands with him in this remains. If he were to kill every single one of them that he met, just when would he be able to kill them all? Killing for no reason would only increase the viciousness in his heart. This was not a good thing for a practitioner. When he recalled Wu Hao from the Jianan Academy back then, he had nearly gone down the wrong path because his viciousness was too strong. Xiaoyan would naturally be careful in this regard. Xiaoyan admitted that he was not a good person. However, he was able to distinguish between right and wrong. Some unnecessary trouble would naturally be avoided as much as possible. After breaking open a few more stone doors, Xiaoyan involuntarily frowned. All in all, it had been less than 10 days since Xiaoyan had entered this remains. After 10 days of searching, Xiaoyan had already broken open over 100 stone doors. Although his harvest was not bad, he was still unable to find the spirit-gathering fruit and the other 2 medicinal ingredients that he wanted. This caused Xiaoyan's patience to be somewhat exhausted. Ugh! Looks like I can only place my hopes in the depths of this remains. Xiaoyan sighed helplessly in his mouth. His body moved and once again flashed into this empty tunnel. According to Xiaoyan's speculation during these few days, he discovered that as long as he continued to walk along this endless tunnel, it seemed that the deeper he went into the remains, the higher the grade and value of the treasures within the stone doors would be. Based on Xiaoyan's harvest during these few days, he had even seen a human-class qi method and dou technique within a couple of stone rooms. As long as one of these things was randomly taken out and displayed outside, it would be considered a priceless treasure. However, they were only placed within these stone rooms in an orderly manner. From this, one could tell that the things within these stone rooms were merely the smallest portion of the entire remains. Hence, at this moment, Xiaoyan decided to target the deepest part of this remains. After all, the truly valuable treasures were all located there. Clearly speaking, the things within these stone rooms might be able to attract the attention of quite a number of Bandi experts, but they were merely some ordinary things in the eyes of a true elite Dou-Di. What they wanted was those treasures that could allow them to raise their strength. For example, these medicinal pills and qi methods might allow them to save their lives, but if they possessed sufficient strength, why would they need to use external things like medicinal pills to protect themselves? As the saying goes, it is better to rely on oneself than to rely on others. After a couple of flashes, Xiaoyan's body swiftly flew toward the deepest part of the remains. With the black robe on his body and the sky absolute steps, Xiaoyan's body was not only invisible, but it also caused others to have difficulty detecting his aura. Thus, even though Xiaoyan had flashed past many Bandi experts, these people did not discover that someone had flashed past them. They did not even sense the slightest movement of the wind. In the face of such a frightening speed, it was likely that only an elite Dou-Di would be able to discover Xiaoyan's traces. This continued until a certain moment when a voice was suddenly transmitted into Xiaoyan's ear while he was swiftly flying. This caused his body, which was originally swiftly flying forward, to suddenly stop. The pair of sharp eyes under the black robe instantly looked toward a certain direction within the tunnel. That direction was where the voice had originated from. Humph. The old me is warning you. We are people from the Yunin Pavilion. If anything happens to the two of us today, there will definitely be someone who will take revenge for the two of us once you leave this place. People from the Yunin Pavilion, huh? Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. His tone gradually softened as he muttered. Chapter 637. Ha 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 ha. Have the two of you really become muddle-headed from fear? Do you think that this is the territory of your Yunin Pavilion? Even if you die here, no one will know that you were killed by us three brothers. Three black-robed human figures stood within the spacious stone room. They formed an encirclement and surrounded the two embroidered-robed old men. The person who spoke at this moment was one of the three, an old man with a shady face. When the strange laughter from this old man's mouth sounded, the other two old men on the two sides also emitted a wave of strange, dark, cold laughter. Humph. Although the old man's words were a little arrogant, it also caused the expressions of the two old men who were surrounded by white to become increasingly solemn. Although the old man's words were not pleasant to the ears, this was the truth. If the two of them really died here, it was impossible for these three people to link this matter to the three of them even if they left. After all, the desolate ancient remains was a place that was filled with various kinds of danger. Even though they were quite strong, it was normal for them to die in this place. Moreover, there were countless strong people in the desolate ancient remains. The Yunin Pavilion could not possibly search for them one by one. Even if they were suspicious, the first target of suspicion would definitely be the people from the four large clans. With this shield, they did not have any worries. Haha, second brother, third brother, quickly attack. Don't give them any chance to catch their breath. After the battle earlier, I think that they have suffered quite a serious injury. Now it is time to end them. The old man leading the group let out a strange laughter. Immediately, his skinny body suddenly shook. He waved his hands and powerful dou-qi swiftly agglomerated at the tip of his 5 fingers. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into 5 sharp thorns. His body moved and the other 2 old men on the 2 sides also moved at the same time. They angrily charged toward the 2 embroidered-robed old men. However, at this moment, An icy voice that was filled with a cold laughter was suddenly transmitted from within the stone room. Haha, 3 against 2, yet you still dare to take advantage of the situation. All of your training has really been wasted. Who is it? Get the hell out here. In an instant, the 3 old men suddenly stopped in their tracks. At the same time, 3 pairs of eyes instantly turned. The old man in the lead suddenly waved his hand as he shouted angrily. 5 sharp strength chi immediately tore apart the space in front of him and fiercely smashed into the space behind him. Boom! With a loud bang, a formation lit up on the stone wall and blocked the old man's attack. Hee, are you looking for me? At this moment, that faint cold laughter was once again transmitted over. Soon after, the gazes of the 5 people in the square turned over at the same time. Immediately, the expressions in their eyes changed. They saw a black-robed human figure standing strangely in front of the 2 elders from the hidden cloud pavilion. However, in the face of such a strange scene, not to mention the 3 old men with their backs facing the black-robed man, even the 2 old men in embroidered robes standing behind them instantly had a look of shock in their eyes. Even they did not realize when the black-robed man in front of them had appeared in front of them. What a terrifying speed! The 2 old men couldn't help but look at each other. Even with their strength, they didn't realize when the black-robed man in front of them had appeared in front of them. At the same time, this shocking thought suddenly rose in the hearts of the 3 black-robed old men. I wonder who you are. We don't seem to have seen you before. I also hope that you won't meddle in other people's business and cause trouble for yourself. It wasn't until a long while later that the black-robed old man in the lead took a deep breath and signaled for the other 2 old men to retreat. At the same time, he cupped his hands towards the black-robed man in front of him and said in a low voice, "Cuckoo." The black-robed man laughed when he heard this. The old man in the lead narrowed his dark old eyes. A cold glint flashed deep within his eyes. "I don't know all of you. Then why are you?" The voice of the old man in the lead was still low and deep. At the same time, the do-chi in his body quietly circulated. Do-chi quietly gathered in his hand, which was behind him and covered by his sleeve. "Although I don't know all of you, not just anyone can touch them." Under the black robe, the expression on Xiao Yan's face became increasingly cold. With his spiritual strength, how could he not sense the little action of the old man in front of him? Immediately, a cold glint shot out from deep within the pair of dark black eyes that were covered by the black plate. "Are you certain that you want to intervene in this matter?" The voice of the old man in the lead became increasingly deep and icy. At the same time, the dense expression in his old eyes became even denser. Just as Xiao Yan and the 2 parties were about to attack, the 2 old men behind Xiao Yan suddenly spoke. "Sir, the 2 of us thank you for helping us without regard for your own safety. However, these 3 fellows are not weak. The 2 of us are also quite injured. It is impossible for us to deal with them. Once the 2 of us lose the ability to fight, you will have to face the 3 of them alone. Cuckoo, there is no need to worry. You only need to tell me where the Union Pavilion is located." Hearing this, the 2 old men were slightly startled. Soon after, they understood the reason why the black-robed man in front of them was helping them. The 2 of them immediately looked at each other. The joy in their eyes could not be any greater. "Sir, the 2 of us are elders of the Yen City Union Pavilion branch." Respectfully cupping their hands towards the black-robed man, the 2 old men honestly reported the location of the Union Pavilion. When they heard Xiao Yan say something that only someone from the Union Pavilion would say, the 2 old men immediately thought that the black-robed man in front of them was an important person from the Union Pavilion. "Oh, Yen City," Xiao Yan softly muttered. Back then, he did not pay much attention to Yen City. Hence, he did not realize that there was actually a Union Pavilion branch in Yen City. "All right, I understand." Xiao Yan immediately nodded gently to the 2 old men in front of him. The expressions on the faces of the 2 old men were filled with joy when they saw this. It seemed that the guess in their hearts was indeed correct. You actually dare to talk to us 3 brothers without fear. Die." Suddenly, the old man who was the leader of the 3 people in front of Xiao Yan suddenly attacked. He was like an attacking poisonous snake as he swiftly pounced toward Xiao Yan. At the same time, the other 2 black-robed old men also suddenly moved. The three figures simultaneously rushed toward Xiao Yan, and the other two in the middle. The old man in the lead in particular had secretly prepared himself, causing the power of his sudden attack to appear even more terrifying. From the looks of it, he seemed to intend to use this attack to directly take Xiao Yan's life. What? Are you the only one who is prepared? Don't tell me that I'm not prepared. The two of you delay them. Let me deal with this fellow. However, in the face of the sudden attack from the old man in the lead, Xiao Yan coldly snorted. The instant he lifted his gaze, the dragon phoenix bloodline in his body was instantly activated. His hand rotated and suddenly clenched tightly. Soon after, he viciously punched towards the black-robed old man in front of him. HTTPS. Genius remembered the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 638. Bang! Soon after, an earth-shaking bang was suddenly emitted. A frightening Do-Chi remnant wave abruptly swept apart within this stone room. The powerful strength caused the entire stone room to suddenly shake at this moment. A formation with a golden glow lingering over it appeared on the wall, and completely blocked the Do-Chi remnant wave. Xiao Yan and the black-robed old man each pulled back after the attack landed. The other two black-robed old men were blocked by the two elders from the Union Pavilion. Although they were currently injured, it was not difficult for them to delay the other two. The strength of each of them was about the same. It was just that the black-robed person was able to suppress the two of them by relying on numbers. However, since it was a one-on-one, they would naturally not be afraid. At the same time on the other side, Bandi? Soon after, the black-robed old man took a couple of steps back and steadily stood on the ground. His nose involuntarily emitted a surprised sound. After the collision earlier, he clearly sensed that the strength of this black-robed person in front of him had clearly yet to reach the Do-D class. However, the thing that caused him to be surprised was that his palm had actually been forcefully blocked by this person. That's right. At this moment, other than Xiao Yan, the remaining 5 people in the arena, regardless of whether it was the 3 black-robed old men or the 2 elders from the Union Pavilion, had all reached the 1-star Do-D class. Although they were only 1-star Do-D, they were similarly powerful existences that could not be matched in the eyes of an ordinary Bandi. However, at this moment, the thing that caused this old man to feel surprised was that the aura that this fellow in front of him emitted was clearly not comparable to a Do-D. However, why was it that the person in front of him was actually able to fight evenly with him in that exchange earlier? How is this possible? You are only a Bandi. The old man's eyes were filled with surprise as he stared at Xiao Yan. It was really difficult to imagine that a Bandi would actually be able to force him, a Do-D, back. Logically speaking, even if the strength of the person in front of him had reached the peak of the advanced 9-star Bandi class, it was impossible for him to be a match for him, a dignified elite Do-D, even if he had not broken through. However, the current situation, this kind of thing was really too unbelievable. Why? Do you look down on a Bandi class expert? Xiao Yan coldly laughed when he saw the expression of disbelief on the other party's face. He rubbed his somewhat numb right hand and his body immediately shook. The aura that belonged to a 6-star Bandi was immediately emitted from Xiao Yan's body. The moment this force was emitted, the expressions on the faces of the 5 people in the arena, including the 4 people who were fighting behind Xiao Yan, instantly became dull. This 6-star Bandi. This guy is actually a Bandi. Immediately after, words filled with disbelief were suddenly spat out from the mouths of the 4 people behind Xiao Yan. This was especially true for the 2 old men from the Union Pavilion. When they saw that Xiao Yan possessed the strength of a 6-star Bandi class expert, a fury that seemed to want to devour someone emerged from their old eyes. His strength was clearly only that of a 6-star Bandi class expert. Yet he still insisted on boasting, saying that with him here, these people would not be able to touch them. This guy, could it be that there is something wrong with his head? The 2 old men silently glanced at each other. Despair involuntarily appeared in the depths of their eyes. This black-robed man was likely here to make them laugh. Ha 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 ha. At the same time, the 2 black-robed old men involuntarily emitted a loud laughter from their mouths. Indeed, the scene in front of them really caused their hearts to feel incomparably funny. However, before they could catch their breath from laughing, the black-robed old man standing in front of Xiao Yan suddenly knit his brows and furiously reprimanded the two black-robed old men. "Don't be so arrogant. What are you laughing at? Quickly finish off these two fellows for me. Leave this brat to me to deal with." After being reprimanded, the two old men hurriedly withdrew their thoughts of joking. Their gazes turned and the expression in their eyes suddenly became stern. Their bodies moved and once again collided with the two old men. This time around, the hope in their hearts had been obliterated. The fighting strength of the two old men had also been imperceptibly affected. However, they immediately fell into a disadvantage the moment they collided. In the end, their defeat was only a matter of time. At the same time, on Xiao Yan's side, compared to the thoughts in the hearts of the four old men, the expression in the eyes of the black-robed old man was not much more relaxed because of this. After all, he had personally sensed the strength of the person before him. He believed that the true strength of the person before him, who was completely wrapped in a black robe, was likely far greater than this. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the attack from earlier to force him back. Trying to act mysterious. Since you wish to fight, this D shall let you experience the strength of an elite Do D. A stern cry was emitted from his mouth. Soon after, the old man's body suddenly shook. An even more powerful force and pressure suddenly swept out from within his body at this moment, suppressing Xiao Yan from all directions. A cold snort was emitted from Xiao Yan's nose in the face of this. His hands under his sleeves were abruptly clenched into fists. Immediately, his feet abruptly took a step forward the moment the aura and pressure came attacking. Flame Domain. When the domain was activated, a hot flame immediately spread out from under Xiao Yan's feet. The temperature of the entire stone room also swiftly rose at an unusual speed. At the same time, powerful Do Qi also swarmed out from Xiao Yan's body, forcefully breaking apart the force and pressure that was coming at him. Soon after, Xiao Yan took a few steps forward. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of the old man. He waved his hand and a fist violently smashed toward the old man's face. "Damn it. You should be faster," the old man quietly said in his heart. He did not dare to be careless on the surface. Just from this aura alone, the strength of the other party was already not as simple as a bandee. It was likely that the strength of a 6-star bandee was merely what it appeared to be on the surface. The old man suddenly waved his large hand the instant Xiao Yan's punch was thrown. He also threw a punch at Xiao Yan. Soon after, the two violently collided in the next instant. Bang! After his attack failed, Xiao Yan hurriedly withdrew his numb right arm at the same time as he turned around. He once again threw a punch with his left fist. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already collided nearly 100 times. Finally, the two of them once again separated after an intense collision. At this moment, Xiao Yan's face involuntarily became a little pale. He was indeed inferior to an elite Do D in terms of pure strength. It was still too difficult for him to rely on his own strength to defeat an elite Do D. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body shook. The numbness on his arms was instantly removed. At the same time, his feet moved and he once again rushed toward the black-robed old man in front of him. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan saw from the corner of his eyes that one of the two Yunin Pavilion elders behind him was finally unable to endure any longer. He was forced back by a palm of the black-robed old man, revealing an opening. At this moment, the black-robed old man took the opportunity to kill that elder with one strike. As for the other elder, his situation was not too bad. However, his intention to save someone was stopped by the other black-robed old man. This caused him to be like an ant on a hot pan, unable to move even if he wanted to save someone. Damn it. Stop right there. Xiao Yan's heart immediately became furious when he saw this scene. The eyebrows on his face under the black robe were tightly knit. At the same time that a stern cry was emitted from his mouth, his body moved and shot toward the black-robed old man, who was about to attack, without any hesitation. At this moment, the black-robed old man behind Xiao Yan coldly smiled. His body moved and he charged toward Xiao Yan, intending to stop Xiao Yan's attempt to save someone. Your opponent is me. If you want to save someone, you have to see if this D agrees or not. The old man let out a stern laugh. His body flashed and in the blink of an eye, He had already appeared behind Xiao Yan. He extended his large hand and viciously grabbed at Xiao Yan's ankle. "Bastard! Get out of my way!" Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan was instantly enraged. On the other hand, the black-robed old man had already arrived in front of the Yunin Pavilion elder who had been blasted back. He raised his large hand and was about to ruthlessly slap down on the old man's face. At this critical moment, Xiao Yan finally waved his large hand. The storage ring on his finger instantly flickered. In the next instant, a black light ruthlessly bombarded the chest of the old man behind Xiao Yan. At the same time, Xiao Yan's body took the opportunity to instantly flash. As he executed the sky extinction steps, the dragon phoenix bloodline in his body was pushed to the limit. With a wave of his large hand, purple gold dragon scales instantly covered his body. In the next instant, he had already appeared in front of the Yunin Pavilion elder. At the same time, Xiao Yan's expression was fierce. He tightly clenched his right fist and suddenly punched out. The instant the black-robed old man's palm landed, Xiao Yan's fist was already like a piece of steel and ruthlessly smashed into the old man's chest. 8. Extreme. Bang. Bang. The moment the furious roar sounded from the bottom of his heart, the black-robed old man in front of Xiao Yan, as well as the old man who was the leader of the three, were all ruthlessly sent flying. Chapter 639. Bang. Following an intense explosion, Xiao Yan's footsteps were swiftly pushed back within the stone room. Each step he took would leave a shallow footprint on the ground. This was the result after the formation had dispersed the force. One could imagine just how strong the force of the collision was. After stabilizing his body, Xiao Yan suddenly waved his sleeves and dispersed the force from his body. Behind him, the elder from the Yunin Pavilion also recovered. He looked at Xiao Yan with blood on the corner of his mouth. A shocked expression involuntarily surged into his turbid old eyes. He had never expected that the 6-star half-D in front of him would actually be able to block an attack from a Do-D. Moreover, from the looks of it, he did not seem to be seriously injured. Immediately, this elder from the Yunin Pavilion could not help but feel shocked by Xiao Yan in front of him. At the same time, he also felt ashamed of the negative thoughts he had in his heart earlier. As for the current Xiao Yan, after stabilizing his body, the pair of eyes under the black robe immediately lifted. His expression was stern as he looked at the black-robed old man who had been forced back. The hand under his sleeves could not help but tremble slightly. Although he had acted in an emergency and resolved the crisis of the old man behind him, the palm from earlier had caused Xiao Yan to suffer quite a bit of hidden damage. Even at this moment, the blood in his body was still churning unceasingly. On the other side, the black-robed old man, who had been forced back by the black light, was in an even worse condition than Xiao Yan at this moment. Not only was there bright red blood hanging from the corner of his mouth, but even the expression on his old face appeared incomparably dark and solemn. Originally, he had wanted to use this opportunity to kill this strange black-robed person. However, who would have thought that Xiao Yan would actually take out such a frightening killing weapon at such a critical moment? Under that kind of distance, this old man did not even have the slightest opportunity to dodge. He was completely struck by the black light from the front. The direct result was that a couple of the ribs in front of the old man's chest were instantly broken. The thing that caused him to be furious in his heart was that even the do-chi within his body was scattered the instant the black light attacked. This caused him to be unable to retaliate for an instant after the black light struck him. He could only be forced back with a heart filled with anger. The black-robed old man lifted his dark old eyes. His face was filled with resentment as he stared at the strong human figure in front of him that was emitting a purple-gold glow. Only when he saw it clearly did the expression on his old face change once again. His eyes suddenly shrunk and a feeling of disbelief rose in his heart. Puppet! How is this possible? The strong human figure in front of him was actually a puppet that did not have any aura. When the old man's shocked voice was emitted, everyone present, with the exception of Xiao Yan, involuntarily turned their gazes toward the old man. Soon after, their gazes uniformly landed on the Northern King. Immediately, the expression in everyone's eyes became one of shock. Clearly, they had also discovered that the human figure in front of them was actually a puppet that did not have any aura. Northern King, do it. Suddenly Xiao Yan, who was standing in front of the Union Pavilion's elder, emitted a thunder-like command from under his black robe. Soon after, the Northern King, who had lowered his head slightly, instantly lifted his cold face. At the same time, his feet violently stomped on the ground. A frightening strength instantly poured out. With just one strike, the formation under his feet was forcefully shattered. At the same time, the Northern King's body was like an arrow that instantly disappeared from the spot. The next time he appeared, he was already in front of the black-robed old man. His fist was waved angrily. It carried a shocking aura as it violently smashed toward the old man in front of him. The old man's heart was greatly alarmed in the face of this sudden attack from the Northern King. Only then did he understand that the puppet in front of him actually possessed a frightening strength that was comparable to an elite Dodi. His heart suddenly tightened. A whistling wind had already pounced toward him, causing his breathing to involuntarily become sluggish. So what if your strength is comparable to a Dodi? A puppet is ultimately a puppet. Withdraw. The old man, who had recovered, immediately let out a furious cry. His body suddenly twisted in midair as he pulled back. His leg violently kicked at the Northern King. The fist and leg collided. The surrounding space immediately collapsed due to the force. The Northern King and the old man's bodies were also pulled back. The Northern King's body shook. His body, which had just taken a step back, was forcefully halted. Immediately, he leaped forward and once again charged toward the old man, who was swiftly retreating. So you are merely a quasi-Dodi. Get lost. A ferocious smile was emitted from the old man's mouth after sensing the Northern King's true strength. His retreating body suddenly paused. Soon after, he violently threw a palm forward. It landed on the chest of the Northern King, who was charging toward him. Bang! Surging Do-chi immediately poured out from the old man's palm after this attack landed. The powerful strength instantly caused the Northern King's chest to cave in. Ga. The black-robed old man involuntarily let out a strange laugh when he saw this scene. His other hand quickly followed, and another palm violently landed on the Northern King's chest. Do-chi poured out, and the Northern King's chest completely caved in an instant. This scene could really be described as the front of the Northern King's chest being pressed against the back. At the same time, the Northern King's fist also smashed into the chest of the black-robed old man. Bang! The black-robed old man instantly felt pain. Both of them involuntarily flew back. Their old faces paled. The muscles on their faces were distorted and fresh blood involuntarily seeped out from their mouths. Even though this was the case, the old man's face still had a smile on it. This puppet was already so weak after just one exchange. The quasi-Dodi class was nothing in his eyes. Gajjg. A strange laugh was involuntarily emitted from the old man's mouth. However, the smile on his face suddenly stiffened when he raised his eyes in the next moment. Soon after, the disdain in his eyes swiftly disappeared. What replaced it was a shock that came from deep within his heart. How is this possible? It was a long while later that the old man's stunned body finally relaxed. The muscles on the corner of his eyes involuntarily twitched intensely. His lips trembled as he softly muttered in his mouth. One could see that the Northern King's chest, which had originally caved in, was emitting numerous black thunderbolts at this moment. The wild and violent energy that was emitted from them swiftly healed the Northern King's caved-in chest in the blink of an eye. Moreover, under the careful observation of this old man, not only did the Northern King's chest completely recover, but the purple-gold color on the surface of its body had also become purer for some unknown reason. However, before the black-robed old man could open his mouth, the Northern King, who was a short distance in front of him, suddenly moved. Immediately, it was like a cannonball that had been fired. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of the old man. Its metal fist danced violently in an unstoppable manner. It violently tore through the empty air and emitted an ear-piercing sonic boom. The wind stirred as a fist once again smashed furiously toward the old man's head. Chapter 640. Bang 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 bang. A series of bangs reverberated through the stone chamber. The battle between the Northern King and the old man became more and more intense. However, at the same time, the expressions of the other two black-robed old men became increasingly gloomy and grave. This was because after the repeated collisions between the old man and the Northern King, all the injuries that the Northern King had suffered were swiftly healed by the dark black lightning. On the other hand, the black-robed old man was made of flesh and blood. The exhaustion of his do chi, the frightening recovery ability of the Northern King, and this puppet body made him an undefeatable war god. Even though the black-robed old man was stronger than the Northern King, he was ultimately no match for the Northern King after such a long period of exhaustion. If this continued, it was likely that he would be completely defeated by the Northern King's hands. At that moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in the old man's heart. After another fierce collision with the Northern King, both of them retreated dozens of steps. Seeing that the sunken part of the Northern King's body was rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye, the old man felt a wave of anxiety in his heart. Using the time he took to catch his breath, he quickly looked at the other two black-robed old men and immediately shouted, "Let's go!" He immediately shouted, "Second, third, what are you waiting for? Quickly attack and end this battle quickly. Finish off that fellow as soon as possible." "Damn it. It is easy for you to say. Why don't you come if you have the ability?" The two old men could not help but curse furiously in their hearts when they heard these words. Originally, with their strength, they should have been able to easily finish off two experts of the same level, especially when they were already injured and their strength had been greatly reduced. However, perhaps it was because the strength that the black-robed person had displayed earlier had given them a great boost in morale. In an instant, the combined attacks of the two of them were completely blocked by them. Moreover, this mysterious black-robed person was eyeing them with hostility by the side. Each time the two of them launched a fatal attack, they would be forcefully blocked by him. This caused the two of them to be unable to truly unleash their strength. Helpless, they could only restrain each other, and were unable to find a way to completely finish them off. At this moment, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was involuntarily lifted into a smile, after seeing that the Northern King's side was correct. From the battle results of the Northern King, the current Northern King was able to rely on the recovery ability of the Thunderbolt to fight an ordinary elite Dodi without being at a disadvantage. Once enough time passed, it would be able to rely on the advantage of its puppet to defeat the other party. Moreover, this was merely the current quasi-Dodi class Northern King. Once his strength truly reached the Dodi class, it was likely that he would be able to fight against a middle-level 1-star Dodi, with just the strength of an initial 1-star Dodi. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a fiery passion in his heart. The North King's strength also represented his strength. In this way, when he faced the four major sects in the future, he might even have the strength to make the four major sects take him seriously. Phew! Xiao Yan involuntarily exhaled a long breath when he thought of this. He smiled in his heart. Now that the Northern King had become a Dodi, he had to settle the score with the four large sections. The future was long. The four large sects would definitely pay the price for the matter back then. Swoosh! Suddenly, Xiao Yan's eyes under the black robe were lifted. At the same time, he waved his large hand and a dark black heavy ruler appeared in his hand. Since he had already chosen to fight, he was naturally not afraid of being recognized by the other party. Moreover, Xiao Yan did not think that he would be able to hide for long during this trip to the desolate ancient remains. Since his identity would be exposed sooner or later, what difference would it make if he revealed it sooner or later? The moment the heavy ruler appeared in Xiao Yan's hand, the two black-robed old men immediately turned their eyes over. Currently, they did not dare to treat Xiao Yan as an ordinary bandit. After all, they had never seen a bandit who could force back an elite Dodi in one strike. However, when they saw the enormous black ruler in Xiao Yan's hand at this moment, the expressions in their eyes changed drastically. A person immediately appeared in their minds. That person was currently renowned throughout the entire western region. Xiao Yan, you are Xiao Yan. Their eyes were filled with fear as they stared at Xiao Yan in front of them. The do chi within their bodies became sluggish at this moment. Their mouths trembled, and the words that were spat out from their mouths appeared unclear. They could not be blamed for feeling fear in their hearts. After all, Xiao Yan was not only the person with the greatest reputation in recent times, but his battle results could also be considered legendary. The three of them naturally had some understanding of the big battle in Coldstream City 3 months ago. Although it was not as miraculous as described by ordinary people, they also knew that Xiao Yin in front of them had truly slapped Sun Shua's face. Just think about it. Xiao Yin was able to slap Sun Shua's face in front of everyone in Coldstream City and emerge unscathed. Wouldn't it be extremely easy for him to deal with them now? The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth lifted slightly under the black robe. When he heard the words from the two old men's mouths, he immediately laughed coldly. Congratulations, you have guessed correctly. However, the seven-layered sky-breaking ruler. The cold laughter had just been emitted from his mouth when the huge ruler in Xiao Yan's hand was suddenly raised above his head before his voice sounded. Immediately, the two hands that were holding the huge ruler suddenly exerted force. The dou qi within his body was wildly poured into the heavy ruler. In an instant, the flame on the heavy ruler soared wildly. The temperature of the entire stone room also became incomparably hot in the blink of an eye. Soon after, the heavy ruler was violently swung out. A shocking ruler glow basically filled most of the stone room. The horror on the faces of the two black-robed old men became even denser the instant they saw this startling ruler glow. However, they were at the very least elite dou di. Their mental fortitude was far from what an ordinary person could compare with. Immediately, the expressions on their faces swiftly became calm after a short moment. Third brother, let's attack together. I don't believe that he is as miraculous as the rumors say. One of the two old men let out a stern cry. Immediately, the body under the black robe suddenly shook. The dou qi in his body instantly surged out, transforming into a dou qi light pillar that shot to the sky and violently smashed into the ceiling of the stone room. Buzz buzz. The enormous force poured down and the entire stone room trembled slightly at this moment. At the same time, the body of the other black-robed old man also shook the instant the words from the former's mouth sounded. The same scene appeared once again. High human level dou technique. Tearing windbreak. High human level dou technique. Raging sea waves. HTTPS. Genius remembers home address in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 641. Human Class High-Level Dou Technique. Tearing Windbreak. Raging Sea Waves. Within the large stone room, the mouths of the two black-robed old men emitted an earth-shaking cry at the same time. At the same time, powerful dou qi energy swiftly agglomerated in the air above the two of them. In the blink of an eye, a flying eagle that was transformed from green-colored dou qi and a substance-like wave were agglomerated and formed. The powerful aura and pressure caused the surrounding space to collapse an inch at a time. The remaining might that was emitted caused one's heart to tremble. Faced with the powerful human-class dou techniques of these two people, even the current Xiao Yin also felt an invisible pressure surging into his heart. The other party was after all an elite dou di. It was a little too simple for him to think that he could fight against them by himself. However, his sword had already been unsheathed, and he could not easily withdraw it without seeing blood. If he wanted to end the fight, he must go all out. Only after finishing off the two people in front of him would he be able to calm this storm. Ha! Xiao Yin suddenly let out a stern cry in his heart when he thought of this. A thought passed through his mind, and the originally powerful dou qi within his body wildly poured out at this moment. At the same time, a clear symbol slowly appeared between his brows. This symbol represented the clan tattoo of the Xiao clan. The moment the clan tattoo appeared, the dou qi within Xiao Yan's body immediately soared. Even the aura within his body swiftly soared. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan's aura had already reached the advanced level of a 6-star half-martial emperor. Soon after, it reached the peak of the advanced level. Finally, in front of the shocked eyes of the two people in front of him, he forcefully broke through to the 7th-star half-martial emperor level. However, this was not all. After the aura within Xiao Yan's body completely stopped, his strength had shockingly reached the intermediate level of a 7-star half-martial emperor. This fellow's aura, why? Damn it! No matter what, use all your strength to kill him. At the same time that the expressions of the two black-robed old men changed drastically, an even more turbulent dou qi began to wildly pour out from their palms. The strength of the flying eagle and the sea wave had become increasingly shocking at this moment. Screech. All of a sudden, an earth-shaking screech was emitted from the mouth of the almost corporeal eagle. At the same time, A pair of enormous wings violently flapped. Immediately, its enormous body violently collided with the incoming ruler light. At the same time, the other old man also moved his hand seal. Above his head, the raging waves surged crazily at this moment. The seemingly substantial waves quickly rose. In the blink of an eye, they had already approached the top of the stone room. The waves surged, emitting a wave of crashing sound like seawater hitting the reef. It was as if everyone was really beside a sea at this moment. "Huh!" Immediately, a stern cry was emitted from this old man's mouth. A thought passed through his heart, and the wave above his head immediately carried a turbulent aura, as it violently pounced toward Xiaoyan. However, at this moment, the two Yunin Pavilion elders beside Xiaoyan suddenly appeared. The hands of the two of them each displayed two different Do skills. Powerful Do Qi continued to rise on the surface of their bodies. In the blink of an eye, powerful Do Qi had already agglomerated on the surface of their bodies. Don't forget that there is still us." The two old men immediately let out a loud cry after the Do skills were formed in their hands. At the same time, the human class Do skills that were formed in their hands were also suddenly unleashed at this moment. They violently smashed toward the incoming wave. "Mr. Xiaoyan, the two of us do not have sufficient strength and are unable to help you much. We can only temporarily delay one of you. As for that fellow, it's enough. Leave him to me to deal with." The attack of the two Yunin Pavilion elders instantly removed a lot of pressure from Xiaoyan's heart. If he were to really deal with two elite Dodi alone, he would really be unable to handle it. However, if it was only one person, Xiaoyan believed that it should be enough to deal with him under the circumstances of using the clan tattoo and the Dragon Phoenix bloodline. As expected, after seeing the two Yunin Pavilion elders attack, the expressions of the two black-robed old men on the opposite side involuntarily changed. Soon after, the graceful ruler glow that was swung out from Xiaoyan's hand violently collided with the incoming eagle. Immediately, an earth-shaking explosion suddenly swept across the stone room. A powerful Do Qi ripple swiftly swept out from the center of the explosion. In the blink of an eye, all the formations that were protecting the stone room were instantly shattered by this powerful energy. The entire stone room began to tremble intensely at this moment. Even the experts in the stone rooms that were closer to the stone room also sensed this powerful energy ripple. After the attack landed, Xiaoyan's ruler glow immediately fell into a disadvantage in front of the eagle. After all, the strength of both parties was still present. It was a little wishful thinking to rely on just one ruler glow to defeat the other party. Xiaoyan, I thought that you would have some great ability. It turns out that you are only SOSO. You are delusional to think that you can contend with the old me with just this little strength of yours. You are really seeking death. Seeing that Xiaoyan's Do skill was easily suppressed, the black-robed old man immediately revealed a disdainful smile on his face. With a thought, the eagle immediately emitted a sharp eagle cry. At the same time, the glow on it suddenly shook greatly. A pair of enormous eagle claws violently grabbed at Xiaoyan's ruler glow. From the looks of it, it seemed to have the intention of crushing it. Faced with the ridicule from the black-robed old man's mouth, Xiaoyan's face under the black robe was lifted into a cold smile. Soon after, just as the eagle was about to move, the expression in Xiaoyan's eyes suddenly turned cold. He suddenly waved the enormous ruler in his hand, and another majestic ruler glow instantly shot out. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. 2 feet. 3 feet. 4 feet. 5 feet. 6 feet. 7 feet. Each successive 6 feet was stronger than the previous one. They basically merged with the first ruler glow in an instant. Only at this moment did the eagle claw violently grab at it. However, at this moment, this ruler light was completely different from before. The ruler's radiance shocked the heavens. It was like a fire banner was erected in this huge stone room. It reached up to the dome and down to the ground. Just the majestic appearance of connecting heaven and earth was not something that the eagle in front of him could compare with. What? The expression on the black-robed old man's face suddenly changed when he saw the shocking scene. However, before he could do anything, a fire glow suddenly soared on the shocking ruler glow, emitting a glaring light. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. Break. A stern cry was suddenly emitted from the bottom of Xiaoyan's heart. At the same time, the frightening ruler glow that rose from the heavenly flame also suddenly fell towards the eagle. Bang! Under this ruler glow, the eagle was merely able to endure for a couple of breaths before it exploded with a bang sound. At the same time, the black-robed old man's face instantly paled. A mouthful of fresh blood was involuntarily spat out from his mouth. https Genius 1 second. Remember this address. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 642. Within the large stone room, a black-robed human figure flew backwards uncontrollably. Finally, he violently collided with the wall of the stone room. A huge force poured down and his entire body was instantly embedded into the wall. Poochie! After suffering such a heavy injury, the old man could not help but spit out a large mouthful of blood. Even his face quickly turned pale. The strength contained in Xiao Yan's attack earlier was not the least bit inferior to an attack from him at his peak condition. In his hurry, he was unable to retaliate. This attack had already caused this old man's strength to suffer quite a serious injury. At this moment, his condition was already close to that of a seriously injured body. Second brother. While the old man was defeated, in the other two battlefields, the expressions of the two black-robed old men changed drastically. They could not help but look at the injured old man, and they could not help but cry out. At the same time, the two Hidden Cloud Pavilion's elders and the current Northern King also took advantage of that opportunity to attack the other two black-robed old men, forcing them back with a single attack. After forcing the two of them back, the two Yunin Pavilion elders wanted to follow up with another attack. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan suddenly shouted, "Enough, come back!" With a low shout, the two elders immediately froze in midair. They looked at each other and frowned. However, they still unwillingly retreated. At the same time, under Xiao Yan's mental command, the North King's body of steel instantly flashed, and he returned to Xiao Yan's side. A pair of empty and indifferent eyes stared at the three people in front of him. As long as Xiao Yan gave the order, he would charge out again. As for the old man who was the leader of the three, as well as the old man who was called third brother, their figures quickly flashed and they quickly arrived beside the old man who had been forced back by Xiao Yan. Second brother. They hurriedly helped the old man up from the ground. Seeing the latter's pale face, the two of them hurriedly grabbed his wrist. With a thought, a trace of spiritual strength quickly entered the old man's body. After sensing the meridians in the old man's body that were on the verge of collapse, the expressions in the eyes of the two men immediately became incomparably gloomy. Although the three of them usually did not think highly of each other, now that one of them was injured, their feelings for each other immediately spread out like a river that had broken through a dam. Xiao Yan. The old man who was the leader roared in a hoarse voice. Although he did not turn around, Xiao Yan and the other two could imagine the ferocious look on his face. Puff. Compared to the former, the latter was even more direct. The dou qi in his body also surged out with a puff sound while his expression changed. He waved his large hand and water vapor churned, swiftly agglomerating into a water-blue longsword in his hand. His arm shook and the sword immediately cut through the air, forcefully tearing the space in front of him apart. The tip of the sword, which was emitting a cold glow, was pointed at Xiao Yan. There was an invisible force that shot toward Xiao Yan. Sensing the force that was shooting toward them, the expressions of the two Yunin Pavilion elders beside Xiao Yan changed slightly. They were about to intervene when Xiao Yan was a step faster. He spun the giant ruler in his hand and swung it from left to right. Although he did not use any dou qi, this casual swing caused an invisible force to immediately rush out. It turned into a gust of wind that caused a layer of ripples to form in the air. In just one exchange, Xiao Yan's invisible gust of wind destroyed the gust of wind that was heading toward him with an unstoppable force. After which, it viciously charged toward the old man without losing any of its strength. The old man was furious in his heart when he saw that his force had been broken so easily. At the same time, the long sword in his hand was slashed out. Dou qi shot out and turned into a sharp sword glow. Only then did it manage to block the invisible ruler glow. Even though this was the case, the sword glow that the old man had slashed out with his longsword was also destroyed. Hiss! The faces of the two hidden cloud pavilion elders beside Xiao Yin involuntarily revealed a shocked expression when they saw this scene. Their mouths involuntarily emitted sounds of inhaling cool air. The two of them secretly looked at each other and felt incomparably shocked in their hearts. Since when did a Do Di become so weak? A sword glow that was agglomerated from Do Chi was actually destroyed by an invisible force that was casually swung out. Moreover, before this, it had already suppressed a force that was not inferior in strength. This kind of thing was too inconceivable. At the same time, even the old man with the sword in his hand could not help but narrow his turbid eyes. The shock in his heart was even greater than the two opposite him. He was a Do Di. Logically speaking, even if he casually swung out a force, it should be enough to make a 9-star half-step emperor pay attention to him. Moreover, Xiao Yan's strength was only a 7-star half-step emperor. However, it was just like this that Xiao Yan had not only suppressed his sword aura with one strike, he had even used it to break his Do Chi. This kind of thing was really unbelievable. Damn it. I don't believe that you are really as godly as the legends say. The old man let out an unwilling roar from his mouth. His body shook and he once again swung the long sword in his hand. Do Chi shot out and his body instantly charged furiously toward Xiao Yan. Who, under the black robe, Xiao Yan's somewhat pale face frowned slightly. Although one of the three people on the other side was seriously injured, he was after all still a Do Di. With the strength of the other two, it was impossible to defeat them within a short period of time, much less make them stay here forever. The strength of a Do Di was not something that anyone could easily deal with. It was impossible to meet someone like Zhao Xian who had delivered himself to their doorstep every single time. Moreover, their battle here had likely already alerted some people in the surroundings. Soon there would be people coming here. Before that, Xiao Yan needed to end this battle as soon as possible. Otherwise, regardless of whether they were able to finish off the three people in front of them, it would bring even more trouble to Xiao Yan. At this moment, Xiao Yan could only strive to end this battle as soon as possible. Mr. Xiao Yan, we will help you. Xiao Yan was just about to intervene when the two Yunin Pavilion elders by the side once again spoke out. At the same time, the Do Chi in their bodies was raised and they were about to step forward. No, all of you should stay here and try your best to recover your Do Chi. I will finish him off as quickly as possible. It will not be too late for you to intervene if any accident occurs. Xiao Yan flipped his hand and tossed a jade bottle to each of the two elders. Each jade bottle contained 4 medicinal pills. Immediately, without waiting for the two of them to open their mouths, Xiao Yan suddenly turned his head. He waved the huge ruler in his hand, and a beautiful ruler glow immediately shot out. At the same time, Xiao Yan's body also rushed out. Like a bolt of lightning, he forcefully broke through the Do Chi pillar that was coming at him. Soon after, he violently collided with the black-robed old man who was charging from behind. Seeing Xiao Yan charge out, the two Yunin Pavilion elders lowered their heads to look at the jade bottles in their hands. They thought about Xiao Yan's words and nodded their heads. Without any hesitation, they opened the jade bottles with one hand. Immediately, a rich medicinal fragrance pounced over. The expressions on the two elders' faces also swiftly changed at this moment. Tier 3 medicinal pills. The two of them let out a cry of surprise at the same time. What was inside these 2 jade bottles were actually 3rd-tier medicinal pills. 4 pills each. When added together, there was a total of 8 pills. 8 Tier 3 medicinal pills. Even with their collections, they could only barely gather all of them. However, this Xiao Yan in front of them had actually taken them out in such a casual manner. This could really be called a great expenditure. I remember that before coming here, I had heard that Mr. Xiao Yan had already become a Tier 3 alchemist. Previously, I was still half skeptical. Now it seems that it is indeed true. One of the two old men, a blue-robed old man, involuntarily exclaimed. With Xiao Yan's current age, he was merely a member of the younger generation in the Yuanwu continent. However, the frightening strength that he had displayed was something that even some experts from the older generation were unable to reach. It must be said that this could really be called frightening. TSK, he is truly a young hero. With his talent, I'm afraid that even in the entire continent, the number of people who can stand shoulder to shoulder with him can be counted on one hand. No wonder, No wonder even someone like young master would praise him several times. If there is another day, Xiao Yan's achievements will definitely not be limited to this corner of the continent. That's right. The stage that belongs to him should be there, the middle region. The two elders stared at Xiao Yan, who was in the midst of an intense battle. For a moment, they had actually forgotten about everything else. They had even nearly forgotten about the injuries on their bodies. When the two of them recovered, they hurriedly sat down cross-legged. After swallowing one of the medicinal pills in their hands, they carefully kept the rest. Immediately, they hurriedly entered a training state and did their best to refine the medicinal pills within their bodies. As the medicinal strength of the medicinal pills spread within their bodies, the injuries on the two elders' bodies were swiftly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Of course, although the injuries on the surface of their bodies were easily healed, the injuries within their bodies were the most difficult to heal. However, under the frightening medicinal strength of the Tier 3 medicinal pills, it was sufficient to allow the two of them to recover 70 to 80% of their condition despite being unable to completely recover. Thus, even if they were to meet an elite Dodi, they would still have the ability to retaliate. At this moment, Xiao Yan's attacks were becoming increasingly powerful as he faced the sword-wielding elder. In an instant, he had pressured the other party until he was unable to catch his breath. In terms of strength alone, Xiao Yan's strength was not inferior to the latter after he had activated the Dragon Phoenix bloodline and the clan tattoo. Additionally, Xiao Yan's frightening physical body was something that even some of the stronger elite Dodi could not compare with. With the support of the Heavenly Flame and the Heavy Xian ruler, the black-robed elder in front of him was no match for Xiao Yan. The Heavy Xian ruler was able to force the longsword in the latter's hand into an extremely dangerous arc each time they collided. The do-chi that covered the longsword was repeatedly burned and refined into nothingness by the Heavenly Flame. At this moment, his one-star bandy strength was completely useless in front of Xiao Yan. Damn it. Get out of my way. The heavy ruler once again narrowly brushed past his body. At this moment, the ashen-faced elder could not help but let out a furious roar. He heavily pushed back the huge ruler with a palm and quickly twisted the longsword in his hand. In an extremely tricky direction, he ruthlessly pierced toward Xiao Yan's head. Seeing this, Xiao Yan coldly smiled. The huge ruler that had just been pushed back suddenly turned around. Immediately after, the broad and thick ruler's blade heavily smashed onto the tip of the longsword. The powerful force caused the longsword to quickly bend. At the same time, sparks flew. The elder's hand, which was tightly holding the longsword, could not help but tremble intensely. Immediately after, the web between his thumb and index finger was actually forcefully torn open by the huge force. Scarlet blood immediately gushed out from it and splashed onto the shattered floor below, turning into beautiful blood flowers. Fight! Enduring the movement that came from his wound being torn open, the elder held the sword hilt with both hands. The already bent longsword fiercely blocked the tip of the heavy ruler. Do-chi crazily poured into the longsword, intending to ruthlessly push back the heavy ruler. However, immediately after, Xiao Yan's mouth suddenly emitted a furious roar. The fire in the eyes under the black robe agglomerated. At the same time, the beautiful heavenly flame that covered the heavy Xian ruler also rose even more violently. Crack! Suddenly, a clear and crisp breaking sound rang out between Xiao Yan and the elder. Immediately, the elder's expression changed drastically. However, before he could do anything, the longsword that he tightly held in his hand actually emitted a clear breaking sound. Immediately, the longsword shattered with a bang in front of the elder's eyes. Grug. When the longsword shattered, the elder was immediately implicated. His face abruptly turned red, and his mouth involuntarily spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood. Immediately after, Xiao Yan's heavy ruler also violently smashed onto the elder's chest in the next moment. Bang! When the attack landed, the originally injured old man's body immediately flew out uncontrollably. He was like a kite with a broken string. In the end, he was supported by the green-faced old man behind him. At this moment, 2 of the 3 Dodi had already been defeated by Xiao Yan. As for the last person, he was the leader of the 3. Although he saw that his 2 brothers had been seriously injured by Xiao Yan, this elder could not vent the anger in his heart. It was for no other reason than the Northern King, who was standing behind Xiao Yan. Currently, 2 of the 3 brothers had already been injured. He could no longer easily attack. Otherwise, once the 3 of them were seriously injured, it would be difficult for them to survive in these dangerous remains. Therefore, one of them had to stay alive no matter what. After forcing back the black-robed elder, Xiao Yan's body stood straight in midair. The heavy Xian ruler in his hand was stored into his storage ring in a flash. A pair of flickering fiery eyes were revealed under the black robe. His expression was cold as he looked at the black-robed elder standing opposite him. Immediately, he looked at the door of the stone room. At this moment, it was just as Xiao Yan had expected. Quite a number of experts had already gathered there. Of course, the strength of these people were only at the Band D level. This was something that caused Xiao Yan to rejoice in his heart. Otherwise, if a couple more elite Do D had arrived, he would really be in trouble today. After using the 7-layered sky-breaking ruler, Xiao Yan had once again seriously injured an elite Do D. It was likely that even an ordinary Do D would not be able to do such a thing. Yet he had relied on the strength of a Band D to forcefully accomplish it. This battle result could be said to be heaven-defying. Of course, behind this heaven-defying battle result, the current Xiao Yan had already reached the stage where he was completely exhausted. If it was not because he wanted to deter this group of hungry wolves in front of him, it was likely that he would have already fallen to the ground. It was also because he wanted to save his last bit of energy that Xiao Yan involuntarily put away the heavy Xian ruler in order to prevent the other party from seeing any openings. Although he was not afraid, a hero could not win against a large number of people. This was ultimately not a long-term plan. After all, there were quite a number of experts who had entered the remains this time around. If this continued to drag on, it would only harm Xiao Yan. Those people outside the stone room hurriedly shrank back and hid when they saw the gaze that Xiao Yan shot over. They were afraid that this frightening fellow would attack them with his ruler. If that attack were to land on their bodies, it was likely that it would be difficult for them to survive. Xiao Yan. Opposite Xiao Yan, the old man's tone was filled with extreme unwillingness. The words that came out of his mouth seemed to have been forcefully squeezed out from between the gaps of his teeth. Anyone who heard it would be able to feel the violent murderous intent that was mixed within. The old man did not deliberately lure the group outside the stone room and let them become cannon fodder. It was not because he did not expect this, but because he understood that in the face of absolute power, no matter how many people there were, it was ultimately useless. From the way he saw it, the current Xiao Yan possessed a frightening strength that could kill anyone present. Although those people outside the door were not strong, they were not fools. It was impossible for them to foolishly charge forward just because of a few words from him. Cough cough. Big brother, let's fight it out with him. Even if we die today, we must drag him down with us by self-detonating. The old man in the old man's arms, whose face was completely pale, struggled to speak. At this point, it was already impossible for them to survive. Since this was the case, even if they died, they must not let Xiao Yan live on opposite them. Shut up. Today, as long as I am around, he can forget about killing us. I will definitely bring all of you out alive. The big brother's voice was extremely solemn. However, it was not difficult to hear from his words that other than being solemn, there was also a determination mixed within. Since he could say such words, he would definitely be able to do it. The body of the old man in black robes suddenly shook when these words were emitted. The little Do Qi in his body suddenly surged out at this moment. He was already prepared to have a final battle, with Xiao Yan in front of him. If he failed, he would go all out and bring Xiao Yan down with him. Seeing this scene in front of him, even with Xiao Yan's character, his heart could not help but be moved. Although the 3 people in front of him were ruthless, it must be said that their brotherhood was incomparable. This point caused Xiao Yan to involuntarily recall his big brother and second brother. The eyes under the black robe slowly shut. The atmosphere in the square also solidified. Everyone outside the stone door held their breaths. The atmosphere in the square was so quiet that it was somewhat frightening. All of you leave. Suddenly, Xiao Yan under the black robe spat out such a sentence from his mouth that caused everyone present to be stunned. No one had expected this, including the 2 black-robed old men, who were still conscious and standing opposite of Xiao Yan. Their hearts were also incomparably shocked. They basically did not dare to believe their ears. This Xiao Yan, who had forced them to the brink of death with his own strength, actually wanted to let them leave? What did you say? The big brother's eyes widened. His face was filled with disbelief as he stared at Xiao Yan and asked with a trembling voice. All of you leave. Xiao Yan once again spoke. His voice was suppressed until it trembled. The weakness in his body had already caused him to be unable to endure. At this moment, everyone did not have the time to bother about these details. At this very moment, the only thing that they felt shocked in their hearts was that Xiao Yan would actually let them leave. If the three of them had the ability, Xiao Yan would have already become a dead soul in their hands. However, in front of them, You really want to let us leave? The anger in the big brother's scarlet eyes quickly faded. No matter what, if he could let the three of them live, why would he care about the current Xiao Yan? There would be plenty of opportunities for revenge. However, the most important thing now was to survive. This time, Xiao Yan did not speak. Instead, he silently nodded. At the same time, the scarlet color in the big brother's eyes had completely faded. He did not dare to be careless. On one hand, he was careful of Xiao Yan. On the other hand, he held up the second brother behind him. An invisible force lifted the two injured men into the air. The big brother's face was filled with caution as he stared at Xiao Yan, constantly on guard. However, just as the three of them carefully arrived in front of the stone door that everyone had retreated to and were just about to leave the stone room, behind the three of them, Xiao Yan under the black robe once again spoke. Wait. The nerves all over the big brother's body suddenly tightened. The dou qi in his body rapidly flowed. His gaze turned and stared intently at Xiao Yan. The killing intent in his eyes once again gathered. https. Genius remembers this site address. Mobile version reading site. Chapter 643. If you want to fight, just come at me directly. There is no need to deliberately tease me. The leader's expression was ugly as he stared at Xiao Yan. His scarlet eyes instantly appeared as though he wanted to forcefully swallow him. If looks could kill, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have died an unknown number of times. When these words were viciously spat out from between the old man's teeth, the old man waved his large hand. Turbulent dou qi immediately agglomerated in his palm. The aura of his body was instantly raised to its peak condition. He was prepared to have a final fight with Xiao Yan in front of him at any moment. A powerful aura rippled and spread around the old man's body. Everyone outside the stone room immediately retreated in shock. They did not dare to get close to watch. They could only watch the black-robed old man in front of the door from a distance, as well as Xiao Yan, who only revealed a small part of his black robe in the depths of the stone room. Swoosh! Just as the old man was preparing to attack, a ray of light suddenly shot out from Xiao Yan's sleeves. It was like a shooting star that shot directly toward the black-robed old man. Ha! The old man involuntarily frowned when he sensed that the ray of light did not have any energy aura. The instant the ray of light arrived in front of him, he suspiciously controlled it in his palm. For safety's sake, the old man did not hold it in his palm. Instead, he controlled it so that it was suspended in the air above his palm. Immediately, when the old man focused his eyes, he saw that it was an exquisite jade bottle that was suspended in the air above his palm. Within the jade bottle, there were clearly 6 perfectly round medicinal pills. Seeing this, the old man's expression was involuntarily startled. Immediately, he raised his head and looked at Xiao Yan. Both of his eyes narrowed as he said in a low and deep voice, "What do you mean by this? There are 6 tier 3 medicinal pills in here." A low and deep voice was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth. The body under the black robe was already trembling involuntarily. Large beads of perspiration repeatedly appeared on his forehead. Ugh! Xiao Yan's words had just sounded when the old man's eyes suddenly shrank. The jade bottle that was suspended in the air above his palm was involuntarily grabbed by him. 6 tier 3 medicinal pills. This was already sufficient to cause the expressions of most experts to change. Even though he was an elite Dodi, he was still unable to ignore a tier 3 medicinal pill, especially 6 tier 3 medicinal pills. At the same time, the expressions of the group of half-martial emperors outside the stone room also instantly changed. Even their eyes involuntarily revealed a trace of greed when they looked at the old man before them. Umph! However, the old man suddenly let out a disdainful snort from his nose. The space shook, and the people behind him immediately shrank back like a flock of frightened sheep. The atmosphere in the square once again became silent. Everyone's eyes were staring at Xiao Yan and the black-robed old man, and they did not leave for even a moment. What exactly do you mean by this? After a moment, the old man could not resist asking. Being an elite Do-D, he clearly understood the value of a Tier 3 medicinal pill. 6 Tier 3 medicinal pills were already sufficient for Xiao Yan to invite a Do-D class expert to be his helper. At this moment, however, Xiao Yan's actions caused him to be a little confused. However, Xiao Yan was non-committal in the face of this. This caused the old man to involuntarily frown quietly. However, the scarlet color in his eyes had once again disappeared. However, the gaze he used to look at Xiao Yan still vaguely contained a trace of enmity. However, compared to before, this was ultimately much better. Just as the old man was about to open his mouth and ask again, the 2 Yunin Pavilion elders, who were not far behind Xiao Yan, finally opened their tightly shut eyes at this moment. A glint quickly flashed across their turbid eyes. Immediately, the 2 of them smiled and hurriedly stood up. They took a few steps forward and arrived beside Xiao Yan. The gazes of the 2 of them swept past Xiao Yan and directly looked at the black-robed old man in front of the stone room. The expression in their eyes was ice-cold. With a thought, the Do-Chi that had just recovered in their bodies immediately swarmed out at this moment. The powerful aura caused the space around the 2 of them to fluctuate. "Mr. Xiao Yan, leave this fellow to us brothers," one of the old men said hatefully. Previously, this old man in front of them had made them suffer for a long time. Now it was time to pay him back. The other old man nodded in agreement. They would not have any pity for these 3 fellows. After all, when the 2 of them were about to die, no one would pity them. On the opposite side, when the black-robed old man saw the 2 of them stand up, the expression on his face, which had just calmed down, immediately changed. He did not dare to be negligent in his heart. With a thought, the Do-Chi in his body once again surged out of his body. He took a step forward and protected his 2 brothers behind him. If these 2 people really attacked, then even if he had to give it his all, he would definitely block them in front of him. After making up his mind, the expression on the old man's face gradually became cold. A trace of determination could be seen between his brows. Just as the 2 people beside Xiao Yan were about to attack, Xiao Yan, who was barely supporting himself, suddenly grabbed their wrists. Immediately, the 2 of them could not help but frown. They were suspicious in their hearts. Why would Xiao Yan stop them? However, when the 2 of them sensed that Xiao Yan's hand was somewhat icy cold, the expression deep within their eyes could not help but change. Only then did they know the specific condition of Xiao Yan at this moment. Yes. The 2 old men looked at each other. Immediately, they gently inhaled a breath of air and nodded to Xiao Yan. At the same time, the Do-Chi that surged out from the surface of their bodies was gradually withdrawn back into their bodies. Seeing this scene, the black-robed old man could not help but frown slightly. In his heart, he did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. His Do-Chi quietly circulated and he was constantly on guard. "You should leave. Since Mr. Xiao Yan has spared your lives, you should leave quickly. Otherwise, even if Mr. Xiao Yan does not go back on his words, once the 2 of us do, you can forget about leaving this place," one of the old men said in a low voice from the 2 of them. Hearing these words, the muscles on the corner of the old man's eyes involuntarily twitched. However, when he thought of the current situation, he had no choice but to suppress the unwillingness in his heart. His eyes revealed a grave expression as they swept over the 2 old men. Only then did he look at Xiao Yan. His tone was dark and solemn as he spoke. "Xiao Yan, remember today's debt. Even if you have taken out a Tier 3 medicinal pill, today's matter will not end so easily." After his words sounded, the black-robed old man ignored the icy-cold expression in the eyes of the 2 old men beside Xiao Yan. He dragged the bodies of the 2 behind him and chased away all the half-emperors in front of him as he walked out of the stone room. After which, he swiftly disappeared into the tunnel. Only at this moment did the body of the black-robed, Pale-faced Xiao Yan in the stone room suddenly softened. He fainted with the support of the two people beside him. Chapter 644. At this moment, two old men with thick auras were seated cross-legged on a broken stone slab that could be considered complete within the somewhat dilapidated stone room. A black-robed human figure was quietly standing in front of the two of them. Following the inhalation and exhalation of the human figure, threads of natural energy within this space appeared to be attracted. They gradually surged into his body, causing the pale white face of the black-robed person to gradually reveal a sleek redness. At this moment, other than the two old men seated cross-legged, there was another strong human figure emitting a faint purple-gold flowing light. He was standing motionlessly beside the black-robed person. At such a distance, he would be able to instantly launch a counterattack if either of the two of them wanted to attack the black-robed person. This involuntarily caused the two old men to be quietly surprised in their hearts. This human figure was clearly a puppet. However, from the looks of it, it seemed to have retained an intelligence that was different from an ordinary puppet. Moreover, during the battle earlier, the two old men had clearly sensed that this puppet in front of them possessed an extremely rich combat experience. Each time it attacked, it would cause its opponent to feel that it was as troublesome as fighting a living person. This was especially the case with its diamond body, which caused it to become unusually difficult to deal with. A quasi-D-class puppet was able to fight with a true one-star Do-D without being at a disadvantage. It was even able to vaguely suppress the latter. It was difficult to imagine that if the strength of this puppet were to rise to another level in the future, would it not mean that even a high-class Do-D would not be a match for it? Hiss! Despite the mental fortitude of these two old men, their mouths involuntarily emitted a sound of cold air when they thought of this. It was no wonder that they would be so shocked. After all, this was a puppet whose strength was comparable to a human elite Do-D. It was likely that no one would dare to easily underestimate such a puppet. Of course, while their hearts were shocked by the strength of this puppet, they did not forget that the owner of this puppet was an even more frightening person, using his own strength to consecutively defeat two elite Do-D. This kind of pride was not something that just anyone could achieve. Moreover, the person who had done this was merely a 6-star bandit. When the two old men thought of this, shock involuntarily surged in their eyes when they looked at the black-robed man before them. Such a powerful master, and a puppet whose strength was not inferior to his master's. Such a combination would probably be able to do as he pleased in the entire western region. It was no wonder that the four great sects were unable to capture him after such a long time. However, the thing that caused the two of them to rejoice in their hearts was that the owner of this puppet was on the same side as them. Otherwise, if they had met such a frightening opponent, it was likely that their Union Pavilion would have encountered quite a lot of trouble regardless of how powerful they were. Ugh! However, just as this thought appeared in the hearts of the two old men, Xiao Yan, who had been unconscious in front of the two of them, suddenly emitted a soft moan. Immediately, his tightly shut eyes trembled gently and he slowly opened them. A gentle light surged into Xiao Yan's eyes the moment he opened them. This caused him to involuntarily frown. After adapting to the light for a short moment, he finally slowly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, Xiao Yan immediately saw the Northern King, who was guarding beside him. The latter's body was like a metal tower that did not move. Wei Ran's aura caused Xiao Yan to feel a lot more at ease. Currently, he was not in his best condition in all aspects. The Northern King had unknowingly become his greatest support. With the Northern King by his side, Xiao Yan could ultimately feel a sense of security. Even though he still had the two elders from the Union Pavilion by his side, this was ultimately unable to make him feel completely at ease. Only the strength that truly belonged to him could truly make him feel at ease. This was also the reason why the two old men were unable to approach the unconscious Xiao Yan. "Mr. Xiao Yan, are you all right?" At the same time that Xiao Yan stood up, the two old men beside him immediately came forward and asked Xiao Yan in a respectful and concerned voice. Hearing this, Xiao Yan took in a deep breath. Soon after, he slowly exhaled and said with a frown, "It's nothing. It's just that I've overused my Do Qi. It's not a big deal. However, I'm afraid that I'll need a few days to fully recover." In this battle, although Xiao Yan had seriously injured two elite Do-D in succession, It was also because of this that Xiaoyan had used both of his trump cards. The Dragon Phoenix bloodline and the clan tattoo. These two trump cards played an extremely important role in this battle. It was because of these two methods that Xiaoyan was able to rely on his full strength to forcefully injure the two elite Do Di to such an extent. After using the Dragon Phoenix bloodline and the clan tattoo, the exhaustion of the two bloodline strengths meant that Xiaoyan would not be able to use these two methods again for a period of time in the future. This would undoubtedly lower Xiaoyan's overall strength. However, it was useless to think about these now. What Xiaoyan was most worried about in his heart was the whereabouts of the soul consolidating fruit. After all, that thing was too important to him. If he wanted to refine the ice spirit pill, Xiaoyan must first obtain the soul consolidating fruit. Of course, Xiaoyan did not forget that there were still the last two medicinal ingredients. These three were one of the reasons why Xiaoyan was unable to refine the ice spirit pill. Hearing the words from Xiaoyan's mouth, the two old men gradually relaxed in their hearts. After complimenting Xiaoyan a little more, one of the old men respectfully handed a snow-white storage ring to Xiaoyan. This Xiaoyan frowned. His pale face involuntarily revealed a doubtful expression. Although he had intervened to save them, he did not say that he was here for their things. Haha, Mr. Xiaoyan, this storage ring contains all the items in this stone room. These were originally in the pockets of us two brothers. However, we did not expect to meet those three fellows. If Mr. Xiaoyan had not arrived in time, not to mention these things, I'm afraid that we would not be able to keep our lives. Therefore, the things inside should belong to Mr. Xiaoyan. The old man who handed the storage ring to Xiaoyan respectfully smiled at the latter. When the other old man saw this, he similarly smiled and nodded his head. It was not easy for them to be able to keep their lives this time. They no longer had any extravagant hopes of being able to obtain the items in this stone room. Furthermore, these remains were not small. They did not lack the items in this stone room. At the very most, they could just find another stone room. Seeing the two old men reveal such expressions, Xiaoyan helplessly shook his head. Soon after, he took the storage ring from the old man with one hand. At the same time, from the depths of his brows, a wisp of spiritual energy swiftly gushed out at this moment. In the blink of an eye, it had already entered the snow-white storage ring and swiftly began to search, hoping to find the soul consolidating fruit that he needed. Unfortunately, after searching for a while, Xiaoyan did not find the slightest trace of spiritual energy undulations. This involuntarily caused Xiaoyan to be a little disappointed. Indeed, a precious item like the soul consolidating fruit was not something that could be easily found by him. However, just as Xiaoyan was helplessly prepared to give up, and was about to withdraw from the spiritual energy's search, suddenly, a piercing chill that caused one's soul to feel a piercing cold was suddenly emitted from a certain corner of the storage ring. Sensing the chill, Xiaoyan's heart suddenly moved. He hurriedly dug out from the pile of natural treasures. Immediately, a strange ice-blue herb with snowflake-like leaves appeared in front of Xiaoyan. This is rapid freeze grass. HTTPS. Genius remembered the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 645. Quick freeze grass. Xiaoyan's face was filled with excitement as he stared at the ice-blue grass stalk that was currently floating in front of him. His pair of pitch-black eyes were filled with surprise. Quick freeze grass. This medicinal ingredient was just like its name. It contained an extremely terrifying icy aura. Its medicinal properties were of the Yin attribute, and could withstand the refinement of most flames for a long time. It could be said that the quick freeze grass was one of the few medicinal ingredients that could be used to restrain flames. However, right now the quick freeze grass was one of the last two medicinal ingredients that Xiaoyan needed to refine the ice spirit pill. This is really a case of searching high and low only to find it by chance. Previously, I couldn't find you. I didn't expect that after saving them, you would appear so obediently. Staring at the quick freeze grass in front of him with a fiery gaze, Xiaoyan could not help but let out a sigh. Immediately, under the sighing gazes of the two people at the side, he carefully placed the quick freeze grass in front of him into a jade box. After which, he placed it into the storage ring. Although he did not find the spirit consolidating fruit, This quick freeze grass could be considered an unexpected surprise to Xiao Yan at this moment. Ever since he had entered the remains, Xiao Yan's heart had a kind of premonition that he would definitely gain quite a lot from this trip to the desolate ancient remains. The spiritual stones that filled the stone room was only the beginning. Even this rapid freezing grass was only a portion of the total gains. It was likely that what would greet him in the future would be an even greater surprise. Thinking of this, the fiery gaze in Xiao Yan's eyes became even more intense. However, waves of weakness that came from his body immediately pulled Xiao Yan back to reality at this moment. Indeed, no matter how wonderful his imagination was, he was currently in a weak state. Even the dou qi in his body had not recovered, let alone the so-called greater harvest. Sighing helplessly in his heart, Xiao Yan did not stand on ceremony in front of the two old men. He directly put the snow-white storage ring on his finger. After a round of investigation just now, in this storage ring, except for a small part of various strange stones, the rest of the things were some medicinal materials. The two old men in front of him were obviously not alchemists. Anyway, keeping it was just keeping it, so it was better for Xiao Yan to keep it for himself. With regards to this point, the two old men naturally had some thoughts in their hearts. Otherwise, they would not have honestly given this storage ring to Xiao Yan. However, when Xiao Yan lifted his head, he saw a trace of a different expression in the pair of old eyes in front of him. Seeing this, Xiao Yan immediately smiled in his heart. Although their mouths said that it was fine, these things were after all the result of their efforts. Now that all of them were taken away by Xiao Yan, the two of them still felt a little reluctant in their hearts. Rolling his eyes slightly, Xiao Yan immediately smiled and did not stand on ceremony. His white wrist rotated slightly, and a golden light immediately flashed across the storage ring on his finger. Immediately, another two exquisite jade bottles appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. The instant these jade bottles appeared in Xiao Yan's hand, the expressions on the faces of the two old men in front of him could not help but change slightly. Even the breathing between their nostrils had involuntarily become a little hurried. Haha, after all, I have taken your things. Treat these medicinal pills as some compensation to the both of you. There are 6 tier 3 medicinal pills in each of these 2 jade bottles. The both of you should keep them. Xiao Yan flicked his finger, and the 2 suspended jade bottles flew toward the 2 old men. Seeing this, the 2 of them hurriedly extended their hands and carefully received the 2 jade bottles in their hands. These were 6 tier 3 medicinal pills. They could not bear for Xiao Yan to treat them so casually. After receiving the jade bottles, the 2 of them immediately opened them and violently inhaled a mouthful of the rich pill fragrance. The faces of the 2 of them immediately became excited. Even the expression in their eyes appeared unusually excited. These 6 medicinal pills were not only tier 3 medicinal pills, but their quality could definitely be considered high grade among all tier 3 medicinal pills. If tier 3 medicinal pills of this grade were to be brought to the auction house, even some elite dodi would not be able to resist bidding for them. After all, even for medicinal pills of the same tier, the difference in their medicinal strength would be extremely great if the quality was different. Normally speaking, even if 2 types of medicinal pills were of the same type, the quality would determine their value. Some high-quality tier 3 medicinal pills could even cause some low-quality tier 4 medicinal pills to be unable to compare with them. In medicinal pills, there were times when the quality of the medicinal pill was the key to determining its value. Even if it was a high-tier medicinal pill, under the premise that it did not possess good quality, its value would also be greatly reduced. Currently, the 6 tier 3 medicinal pills that Xiao Yan had given to the 2 old men were undoubtedly able to squeeze into the upper middle tier of tier 3 medicinal pills. How could this not cause them to feel excited in their hearts? After recovering, the 2 old men saw the strange gaze that Xiao Yan had thrown at them. The 2 of them could not help but awkwardly smile. Only then did they hurriedly withdraw the expression on their old faces. Immediately, the 2 of them looked at each other and hurriedly stood up. They respectfully bowed to Xiao Yan as a junior. At the same time, their mouths also respectfully said, "The 2 of us thank Mr. Xiao Yan for your kindness." Seeing this, the expression on Xiao Yan's pale face could not help but be slightly startled. He immediately waved his hand, hurriedly stood up and shook his head. "There is no need for the 2 elders to be so courteous to me. No matter how one puts it, I am only a junior in front of the two of you. I am unable to accept the way the two elders are treating me. Mr. Xiaoyan really knows how to joke. In the Yuanwu continent, strength is respected. As long as one possesses sufficient strength, one is a senior. As the saying goes, those who reach first are respected. Mr. Xiaoyan's strength is extremely great. Naturally, you can accept the bow of the two of us. As the two of them spoke in this manner, their waists, which were bowing to Xiaoyan, became increasingly lower. Seeing this, Xiaoyan also understood in his heart that it was completely impossible for him to stop them. After all, the two of them were elite Dodi. At this moment, he was not in his best condition. How could he stop them from doing whatever they wanted to do? Helpless, Xiaoyan could only quietly accept the bow of the two of them. Soon after, Xiaoyan's gaze glanced outside the stone room, and involuntarily frowned. Just now, he seemed to have vaguely sensed a pair of strange eyes looking in his direction. However, it was only for a short instant. This caused Xiaoyan to be unable to capture the source of the gaze. Helpless, he could only mistakenly assume that he was overthinking. After all, Xiaoyan's current condition was extremely poor. It was already very difficult for him to use his spiritual strength to investigate. It was not surprising that he had seen wrongly. Xiaoyan helplessly withdrew his gaze. Immediately, he once again looked at the two elders in front of him. At this moment, the two of them had also coincidentally stood up. Seeing that there was no unusual expression on their faces, Xiaoyan confirmed the thought in his heart. Since even these two elite Dodi did not sense anything unusual, he must have seen wrongly. Cuckoo, Mr. Xiaoyan is really a dragon amongst men. You are already so promising at such a young age. It is likely that your future achievements will be extraordinary. The three of them once again sat down cross-legged. One of the two elders, who was wearing a long blue robe, involuntarily cupped his hands to Xiaoyan. The words in his mouth were half complimentary as he spoke. The other elder by the side also cupped his hands, and spoke with an accompanying smile after the laughter from the blue-robed elder's mouth sounded. The eyes of the two of them were filled with respect when they looked at Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan involuntarily smiled bitterly and shook his head when he heard this. He had indeed displayed his overbearing strength in the battle earlier. However, so what? The current him was still in a miserable state. Cuckoo, the two of you need not tease me. If the two of you were not by my side today, it is likely that those fellows outside the door would have already charged in and attacked me. Mr. Xiaoyan, you must be joking. With that puppet of yours, forget about a few insignificant bandi. Even if an elite Dodi were to come, it is likely that they would not be able to get close to you. The old man laughed out loud. His eyes involuntarily glanced at the Northern King, who was standing beside the three of them. That unparalleled metallic feeling, the purple-gold flowing light slowly flowed, and the icy cold aura seemed to keep people at a distance of 1,000 miles. Even though the two of them were elite Dodi, their hearts still felt an endless seriousness when facing the Northern King. This was something that the three black-robed elders combined could not give them. Xiaoyan only smiled in a non-committal manner when he heard this. He did not continue to be entangled with this question. The two elders in front of him had clearly seen this point. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Immediately, they laughed and changed the topic. Cuckoo, may I know what plans Mr. Xiaoyan has after this? This time around, the blue-robed old man's question hit the nail on the head. Once these words were spoken, the expression on Xiaoyan's pale face immediately became solemn. The joking expression on the faces of the two of them was completely swept away when they saw this. They did not dare to be careless. May I know if the two of you know where the soul-gathering fruit can be found within this remains? Following the silence of the atmosphere, Xiaoyan finally asked the two elders in front of him in a serious voice a long while later. The two elders involuntarily frowned when they heard this. The blue-robed old man lowered his head and thought for a moment before frowning and gently shaking his head. The soul-gathering fruit. That thing is really too valuable. If Mr. Xiaoyan wishes to find it in this outer area, it is likely that it will not be easy. Outer area? Xiaoyan involuntarily raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He was surprised in his heart. Along the way, he had heard the way that everyone addressed their current location. The stone room that they were currently in seemed to be the outermost part of the remains. However, he did not know just what kind of scene it was in the deepest part of the remains. Yes, the location that we are currently in is only the outer area of the remains. The blue-robed old man nodded and said. Xiao Yan involuntarily extended 2 fingers and rubbed his chin when he heard this. He quietly thought about something in his heart. At the same time, the blue-robed old man in front of him once again opened his mouth and said, According to what I know, this remains is divided into 3 levels. Of course, this is also the common stratification of most remains. The first level is the outermost part of the remains that we are currently in. The things in the outermost part are the cheapest goods in the entire remains. I believe that there is no need to say more about this point. Mr. Xiao Yan will also understand. Xiao Yan once again nodded when he heard this. He continued to listen to the old man's explanation. The outermost part of the remains is called the enormous rock hall. The most valuable things within it are at the very most only able to arouse the interest of a 3-star Dodi. The reason why the 2 of us are staying here is also because of this. The old man's face involuntarily revealed an embarrassed expression when he spoke until this point. The old man by the side also involuntarily laughed dryly. Only then did the old man continue speaking. It is rumored that the middle layer of this remains is an ancient forest. The things within it can be considered the true treasures. After all, the ancient forest has existed for an unknown number of years. The magical beasts within it have generally reached the Dodi class. That place is the tomb of all the Bandi class experts. At the same time, the entire remains is divided into different grades. It can be said that there is not the slightest difference between the grades. Xiao Yan involuntarily nodded quietly when he heard the emotional words from the old man's mouth. His heart was similarly emotional. Unfortunately, the rules of this continent were like this. Whoever had the biggest fist had the qualification to speak. This place would forever be a world filled with barbarism and overbearingness. If one wanted to survive and grow in this place, one would not only need a frightening training talent, but various opportunities were also extremely important. Just like the interior of this remains, the strong would always be the strong. Although the weak could obtain small benefits, in their eyes, the weak would always be the weak. Without the ability to enter the deepest part of the remains, they also did not have the qualification to enter. The so-called ability was the fist used to defeat them. The so-called qualification was to defeat them. As for the deepest part of the remains, the situation there is still unknown. After all, even those people who had barged into the remains back then, very few of them were able to leave alive from the middle layer. The blue-robed old man involuntarily frowned and shook his head when he reached the end of his words. Forget about him. It was likely that even the members of the 4 great clans did not know much about the deepest part of the remains. When he heard this, Xiao Yan involuntarily frowned. Although the blue-robed old man had roughly explained the layout of the remains, Xiao Yan had not obtained the answer that he wanted to obtain the most in his heart. The whereabouts of the soul condensation fruit. Right now, if Xiao Yan really had to explain the whereabouts of the soul condensation fruit himself, then it was likely that it could only be in the middle layer of the remains, or perhaps in the deeper parts of the remains. When he thought of this, Xiao Yan's heart could not help but sink a little. If the soul condensation fruit was really in the deepest part of the remains, then when the time came, he would inevitably have to face the 4 great clans head-on. If this was at the peak of Xiao Yan's strength, perhaps he would really have the confidence to tangle with them for a while. But now, sigh. When he thought of this, Xiao Yan could not help but sigh softly once again. At this moment, the other old man dressed in a long gray robe to the side hesitated for a moment before he suddenly frowned at Xiao Yan and said, Mr. Xiao Yan, perhaps I know where the soul condensation fruit is. HTTPS. Genius remembers this site's address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. M.